The recording's on. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, welcome everyone. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Let's go ahead and start with a roll call. And do you want to do introductions after roll call? Does that work?
We can Annette can say the name, and the council members can, if they attend the meeting, they can introduce themselves, and we'll go to the list. Tony, do you want to try it this way?
Sure, that sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, so we have Tony Doan.
Present. So I represent the East Side Fire Marshal and building official over in the city of Yakima. And this is the second meeting I've chaired, so be patient. Not for tags, but for council.
Okay, then we have Shell Anderson.
Present. I am the architect representative. I work in Seattle, Washington, and for Element Architects, and am the chair of the Energy Code Technical Advisory Group and the Mechanical Ventilation and Energy Committee that also handles the Energy Code.
Okay, and Jay Arnold.
Here.
Did you want to introduce yourself?
Sorry, I just popped on. Hi, I'm Jay Arnold, Deputy Mayor for the City of Kirkland.
Okay, and Todd Bayreuther.
Here, greetings. I am the manufacturing representative, also east of the Cascades, and I work in timber manufacturing at a mass timber factory in Spokane.
And then Micah Chappelle.
Thank you. Micah Chappelle. I represent the code officials for the state of Washington. I work as the technical code development manager for Seattle's Department of Construction and Inspections. And I also am on the Washington Association of Building Officials Executive Board. And so thanks. And
Okay, and Damon Doyle.
Good morning, Damon Doyle. I represent the residential construction industry. I've been a home builder for more than 30 years. Also a Energy Star verifier, ResNet, HERS rater, and a building science instructor.
Perfect. And Al French. I believe he declined the meeting. Bob Hamlin.
Good morning, Bob Hamlin, Skamania County Commissioner. I represent the elected officials for the west side of the Cascades.
Okay. And Roger Haringa.
I am present. This is my second council meeting. I represent the structural engineering community, and I have worked at DCI Engineers for about 34 years, the last 15 of which I was running the company, which I'm now stepping back from those duties and wanting to participate elsewhere, which is why I'm happy to be on the council.
Perfect. And Matthew Hebner.
Sorry, Matthew just called me 30 minutes ago. He will unfortunately miss the meeting due to a conflict in schedule, but he will attend the next one in June.
Perfect. How about Craig Holt?
Present. I am the commercial building representative. I have been in the industry for almost 40 years, and I'm happy to join you and be a supportive member of this group.
And Pete Ricky.
I represent the disability community, live in Pasco, Washington, and am an electrochemist by training with a considerable background in energy technologies.
Great. Katie Sheehan.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I am over on the east side too in Spokane with the Community Building Foundation and representing the general public seat. Thanks.
And Carolyn Trout.
Present. Hi, I'm Caroline Traub. I represent mechanical engineers on the council. I'm an engineering manager at McKinstry, and I chair the mechanical tag and also sit on the MVE committee.
Okay, and Corey Wilker.
I'm Corey Welker. I'm a plumbing agent with Local 32, and for the council, I represent plumbers for the west side.
Perfect. So we do have a quorum, and then I want to introduce the ex officio members. We have Larry, Representative Larry Hoff. Nope. How about Senator John Lovick?
Yes, good morning. This is my first meeting. I was just appointed. I'm John Lovick. I am a senator in the 44th district in Snohomish County, which is currently Marysville, Lake Stevens, the city of Snohomish, Mill Creek, and unincorporated Snohomish County. Glad to be here. I know I have a lot to learn. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Representative Alex Ramel. Senator Linda Wilson. And then our Assistant Attorney General, Derek Meyerbachtall.
I'm here. I'll put myself on camera because I actually wear a suit today. And just for everybody, I'm not an ex officio member, but I'm happy to be here supporting the council.
Okay, does that conclude the roll call in it?
That's it.
Okay, thank you so much and welcome everyone. That was a good idea, Micah. Thank you. Let's go ahead and move to review and approve the agenda. So you see that up in front of us here. If there's any requests for change, now would be the time. Otherwise, looking for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve as shown.
Okay, we have a motion on the table.
I'll second it, but I'll ask a question after I second it.
Okay, excellent. Jill has the second, and at this time we'll open it for discussion.
The possible executive session, is that part of the motion to approve the agenda? I don't
Yes,
know. Do we need to decide that now, or do we decide that after we approve the agenda?
that's a good question. I think it doesn't hurt either way.
I think with the wording, we can approve it as possible, and then we'll talk
It's
about it
possible,
next.
yes.
So, good question, Jill. Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any against? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, now let's move to our possible executive session. And Stoyan and Derek, how are we feeling about this?
If you don't mind, Stoyan, I can jump in. I'm available to discuss briefly in executive session the resolution of the BIWV Inslee lawsuit. But there isn't any particular news on that other than the case did formally resolve this week. But I wanted to make myself available if anybody had any questions about that we need to go into executive session to discuss.
Okay, excellent. For council members, would anyone like an executive session to discuss that?
I would just have a question of Dirk. Is this resolution now public record? And if so, then I would, if I see you shaking your head, then I would not feel we need an executive session at that point if this is already public record.
Yeah, I'll just, in order to just fill in a little bit of gaps here, the court entered formal dismissal of the action with prejudice. I think it was on Wednesday of this week. And so the case is behind us. It's been resolved. And absolutely, Micah, it is part of the public record.
I think I sent the document to everybody yesterday.
Yep. Jay Arnold?
Derek, for the information we had on hold on our emails, is that all expired at this point?
Yeah, good question. Just for everybody's benefit, it's the policy of DES, the Attorney General's office, to issue litigation holds on pending litigation. And litigation hold was issued in this case. I will be talking to DES Public Records Officer this afternoon regarding taking steps to release that hold.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from council on agenda item number 3? Okay, I think we can move on. Before going to agenda item number 4, I'm going to back up a little bit because it'll tie into agenda item 4. Is there anyone from the public that would like to be recognized?
I guess this is the time for me to jump in, or Annette and Krista, if they, Annette and Krista are the technical gurus today, and we also have a person from our IT department that will be helping us. As you can see, we're using Zoom webinar. It was necessary based on what happened at the last meeting. We really wanted to use the most user-friendly Zoom version, but I guess some personal behavior didn't allow us to continue with that. So we'll be using Zoom webinar. All council members will be panelists, and the council chair will be assigned as a co-host. So in this case, he can control who is speaking. All attendees, they will be allowed to speak if they raise their hands. This is the only way we can control. We don't want to control who is saying what. We just want to control, something similar to what happened the last time. So if somebody from the public wants to speak, please raise your hand, and Tony or Annette will allow you to speak.
Thank you, Stoyan. So I have Larry Andrews' hand is up, and so is Terry Bill. So I'm going to unmute Larry.
Yeah, my name's Larry Andrews from Andrews Mechanical. I'm here to just view what's going on and comment on some of the issues coming. I've been working with council for at least 20 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. And Terry, go ahead. I think you should be able to unmute now. Terry, you're going to have to hit the unmute button, I think. Oh, wait, we have a Q&A here. Let's see. Oh, that's not it. I hit the ask to unmute button for Terry, but I don't know if it's working. It worked with Larry. So it must not be working. Amy Willis, hopefully I said that right, from Northwest Energy Coalition. That's in the comments. Okay, I don't know why that's not unmuting, but
Terry should be unmuted now.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry about that. The new format kind of had me confused there. Terry Beals, representing Sound Transit on legislative and regulatory issues. Just here today to observe. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Okay, anyone else from the public that would like to be recognized? Okay, with that, we'll move to agenda item number 4 and kind of officially jump into that. So is there any public comment on items not on the agenda today? And remember, for those of the public, please raise your hand and we'll be able to call on you. And it looks like we have Larry Andrews.
I'd just like to let you guys know that this is the coldest spring we've had in Spokane ever, and we still haven't reached 70 degrees yet in this city, and it's setting all records. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Okay, is there any other public comment on items not on the agenda? Okay, with that, we'll move on to item number 5, review and approve the minutes from April 22nd, 2022.
Unfortunately, we don't have the minutes today due to the issues the last time and some extra work we needed to perform to clean up the recordings, and in addition to 5 or 6 technical advisory group meetings. And so we're almost done with the minutes, but we couldn't make them available today. At the next meeting in June, we will have the minutes for April 22nd and today's meeting. So I apologize for that.
Okay, we'll table that for our next council meeting. Thank you for the explanation, Stoyan. Okay, let's jump into item number 6, which is council leadership.
And the council leadership, okay, thank you, Annette. I wanna share my screen. Do you see the yellow highlights?
Yes.
Okay, so in the council leadership, we touched this a little bit the last time. As you know, Andrew was the chair. He's no longer with the council. Tony is the vice chair. He was appointed in January. He is currently the acting chair. And I mentioned the last time, I mentioned 2 options for the council to decide. The first one is the easy one. Tony will continue to be the acting chair, and there is no need for any council action on that. And the second option is we need to modify the bylaws. Why we need to modify the bylaws? Currently, the council can elect a chair and a vice chair in the first meeting, which is in January. Okay, and we passed that. We had the president the last year. Andrew was the acting chair for 3.5, 4 months. And in coordination with Dirk, I ended up with 2 options for modifying the bylaws. However, again, it should be up to the council. You folks can propose other options or clarify the options you have right here, or just say, we don't need to do anything, and Tony will continue to serve as an acting chair. If you decide to modify the bylaws, it will need 2/3, so we'll need 10 votes on that. And Dirk, please, if I'm saying something that is not legally correct, feel free to correct me.
Thanks, Stoyan. That sounded legally sound to me.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm getting better, I guess.
Yeah, you're well trained.
All right, so let's do this. Let's open this up for council discussion. And Micah, go ahead.
Just out of curiosity, how will this affect having a vice chair or chair pro tem as also required by the bylaws? If we just and I guess I should preface that, if we just continue having Tony as acting chair, do we have to elect those other 2 positions at this time?
No, the same rules apply to the vice chair. So the council can elect chair and vice chair in the first meeting in January. And if Tony continued to be the acting chair, he'll be the legal vice chair and the acting chair.
If you don't mind me stepping in for a second, Stoyan, so part of the challenge here is under the current bylaws, there isn't a succession in the event that Tony's unable to attend a meeting or has to step back from the council work for any basis. The only pathway going forward under the current bylaws would be until a subsequent election, or the next election rather, at the beginning of next year, right? Would be to appoint I can't recall if it's an ad hoc or an interim chair per meeting, right? So that's the dilemma here, or the gap that is the basis for this conversation.
Here is in yellow the current section 1 that talks
Excellent.
about the election of chair and
So
vice.
it sounds like Derek's saying that, Tony, you cannot get sick. You have to be here every meeting.
That's the plan. Chell, go ahead.
Yeah, I read through both options and I liked option 2 better. It seems to provide more flexibility. So that was my preference based on what was shown on the screen just a minute ago.
Okay, we'll scroll down there. So that's in the event of a vacancy of a chair, the vice chair shall assume the position of the chair, serving the unexpired term of the chair. In the event of a vacancy of a vice chair, the board shall elect a vice chair to complete the unexpired term of the vice chair. So that's the one you like, Jill. Okay, excellent. And Katie, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so in this scenario, because Tony would then, it basically does the same thing, right? It's Tony would vacate the vice chair seat and we would have to elect a vice chair position anyway. So that's, the effect is the same.
Yeah, other than right now, there's just isn't something in place where we could vote in a vice chair. So it just kind of is
Yeah,
closes up that gap.
you'd have to wait till January to do it.
Right. Yeah, no, that seems
okay.
Funky.
All right. Thank you, Katie. Micah?
I agree with Shale that the second option is probably the best. However, I do like the second half of the first sentence in option 1, where it gives a timeline for that election to occur. So if we could add that to option 2 in some way, I think option 2 would then be the best path forward as well.
I like that. Okay. Damon?
It looks like my comments have already been echoed by previous speakers, but I think the first order of business then today would be to move and pass this motion.
Okay, excellent. Any other discussion? Roger, go ahead.
Yeah, as a new member to the council, I'm in favor of this, and I like option 2. I think it makes sense. There actually are some other governance things that that I have thoughts on and suggestions for, specifically trying to avoid having new positions step in at the very last minute when we're trying to approve new codes. So that's, I think, for future. I support this, but at some stage of the game, I'd like to have some conversations about some other governance things. And so.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Todd, go ahead.
Thank you. Micah, is that what you meant? Because I interpreted your comment as you were referring to the second part of the first sentence. The position shall be filled by election not later than the date of the second ensuing.
Yes, Todd, I was going to get there. So thank you. I did not want to move the second sentence down. If you look at the first sentence in option 1, where it says as Todd pointed out, the position shall be filled by election no later than the date of the second ensuing regularly scheduled council meeting. That's what I'd like to move into option 2.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thanks, Todd.
And Jay, did that steal your thunder? Okay. All right, perfect. Okay.
Is that the way you want to see it? Or it should be, well, what I can offer you, instead of trying to write a legal document on the fly, if you agree that you want to change the bylaws, I can work and give me some direction. I can work with Dirk and we can end up with the language that will be set for the meeting in June, and you can approve the exact language versus, doing edits on the fly. Can we do that?
I would say we can edit it on the fly. Storian, if you'll take after the comma and just from the position shall be filled by the election and put that at the end of the last sentence, like remove the period. So start with who's in control of the screen there.
I'm in the control, but
start right there. Select the sentence from there to the end.
Okay.
Okay, take that and put it at the end of the paragraph.
Right here?
right there. And you'll need to change that period to a comma. Nope. Go back and change the period to a comma, please.
You're too bossy.
I know.
Okay.
There we go. That's what I'm looking for, and that works for me.
I'm not
And-
bossy, but I object to commas used when they shouldn't be used. I don't think that should be a comma, but
Oh, we're gonna get in the Oxford comma debate, Derek. That'd be fabulous. Let's do it. I'm kidding.
Oxford
Totally
comma
kidding.
rules.
I'd prefer a semicolon right there, if, or just a period.
That's called a compromise, Joe. I like it.
How about we
What?
change the comma to an and?
That's even better.
You got me
I'm good with
confused. Okay, where is the
That comma right there.
and you wanted,
Somebody needs to be bossy to Stoyan.
yes, please.
Delete the comma and insert the word and, A-N-D.
Ah, okay. And
This is starting to sound a lot like a tag.
and we don't need this sentence here, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And I think you still need to delete the comma according to Derek, right?
No, no, you would need a comma there if you're going to do it this way. But a suggestion could be that the motion could direct the staff to make any grammatical errors or corrected grammatical errors.
Would we need the 2/3 vote in order to move forward with this today, if it's just directing staff for the language?
Well, we need 2/3 vote to change the bylaws.
That's
Yeah.
what- Yeah, okay. Chell, go ahead.
I will make a motion.
Okay.
Can I, I'm sorry, it was right here in my mouth and I thought, Jill, you had a question, so I didn't say it, but so when I read option 1, I couldn't sleep last night, so you know, it's always a trouble when you can't sleep, but so option 2 doesn't really say, so currently the chair and the vice chair, they have 1-year term and they are allowed to have 2 terms. So what will happen if the vice chair assumes the position for a month, and then what, does it count as 1 term and the vice chair / chair cannot have more than 1, or it doesn't count into the 2 terms currently allowed by the bylaws? That's, again, I'm not an attorney. I'm just saying that it wasn't clear to me when I was reading it.
So where does it say 2 terms? In the bylaws?
It's right.
You could just say 2 full terms, and then it would clear that up.
Right here. Shall serve for a period of 1 year. So this is 1 year.
2 consecutive 1-year terms of office, so.
Yeah, I think that
Okay,
speaks.
okay.
Yeah, so what you could potentially have is under the proposed bylaw amendment would be maybe nearly 3 years of a term for a chair. If the vice chair steps into the position shortly after the start of a 1-year term.
But they still would have to be reelected.
The board council members obviously would need to continue to reelect them, yeah, that position.
Okay.
And yeah,
Okay, we're good then.
Okay. Chell, go ahead.
I will make a motion to amend the bylaws to include what we see on the screen, which was formerly option 2, now it's the only option, as modified in front of us, and also that staff has liberty to modify language to clarify what the council's intent is regarding this bylaws change.
Okay, we have a motion.
This is Corey. I'll second.
Thank you, Corey. We have a motion and a second. Chell, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think it's already been said.
Okay, Corey, would you like to speak to your second?
We're all good. Let's call the question.
Okay, any other discussion from council members? Okay, although, let's do a roll call.
Annette?
Okay, so not Tony unless there's a tie, right? Or,
Correct.
okay, sorry. Okay, Jill Anderson,
Yes.
Jay Arnold,
Yes.
Todd Bayreuther,
Aye.
Micah Chappell,
Aye.
Damon Doyle,
Aye.
Bob Hamlin,
Aye.
Roger Haringa,
Aye.
Matthew Hepner. Oh, he's not here, sorry. Craig Holt. Craig.
He told me that he may need to step out for a little
Okay,
bit.
I don't see him. Okay. Pete Reiki,
Aye.
Katie Sheehan,
Yes, sorry about that.
Carolyn Traub,
Aye.
and Corey Welker.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. That's
How many we have?
I counted 11.
11.
11. Okay.
Okay, motion carries. Excellent.
So the question here is for Dirk to clarify that, do we need to vote on a vice chair now?
Todd, go ahead.
I don't recall. Have we ever voted for a pro tem? How do we? address
No,
that?
the pro tem, the pro tem is usually appointed if we don't have a chair and a vice chair for the meeting.
So a pro tem in the bylaws was never required to be voted on once the vacancy was there from me going to chair.
That was my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's how I understood it too. Chael?
Does a bylaws change take effect immediately, or does it need to go through some process before it is official?
I think we're waiting on Dirk here.
Yes.
I'm here. Was there another question for me?
Yeah.
What was the other question? Excuse me.
So I had another question, didn't you?
My first question was, do we need to, do the council needs to vote for a new vice chair right now? And Chair had a question.
Does it go into effect right away? Excuse me, that's I don't know the answer off the top of my head. I'll take a look at my Roberts real quick to see if you answer it, but can we push that question back later then? No.
Chael, go ahead.
The bylaws we voted on said we wouldn't have to do it today. It's no later than the second date of the second ensuing regularly scheduled council meeting. So even if the bylaws took effect today, we wouldn't have to elect a vice chair today for my reading.
Okay.
The only argument would be is this would be the second meeting, but this wasn't in place then. And so I see what you're saying though, Chael. It's the way it's worded. If it's enacted today, maybe we have another meeting. So Micah, go ahead.
I would think we'd also, if my understanding is correct, for bylaw changes, that we would have to allow a period of comment, public comment, but I could be wrong on that bylaw change. So I don't think we need to do it today, but we'll wait for Derek.
Well, there is the OPMA, when it changes to it that will go into effect in June, will require all governing bodies to provide for public comment on items in which action is taken. It's not required right now. Maybe you could certainly open it up now to see if the public has any comments on this. Votes obviously already taken place, but the OPMA doesn't mandate public comment for these purposes. The scope of my research will be simply to see if there's any controlling law or custom with respect to when a bylaw goes into effect. I could note, by the way, you could also separately direct that the bylaw goes into effect by vote as a council action. So just establish the effective date.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, we'll move on to agenda item number 7, appointment of committees.
Okay.
Alex Jamel.
Thanks. And just before we move off of this topic, Tony, just wanted to, I had meant to say something at the last meeting and we kind of ran out of time, but while we're thinking about the leadership, just wanted to give you commendation for your management of the meeting last month. I thought you did a good job. You were stepping in as a new chair. We had new members. We had intentional disruptions to the meeting. We had a lot of contentious stuff and some complicated Robert's rules to sort through, and didn't want to get too far past that happening without saying that was really good. I've sit in a lot of meetings, some of them well facilitated, some of them not. And you just wanted to give you commendation for a job well done last week.
Thank you, Representative Mel. Appreciate that. All right, let's go ahead and jump into our I lost my agenda. Our appointment of committees. So Stoyan, do you want to give a quick rundown of this and kind of what our council action is here today?
Yes, so we have technical advisory groups. The technical advisory groups are chaired by a council member. So we have chairs for all technical advisory groups. However, if other council members want to be appointed as technical advisory group members, it will need a vote by the council. The council members can participate at the technical advisory group meetings, but if they are not specifically appointed by the council, they cannot vote. Okay, so this is, we will go through some technical advisory groups, and then we need to update the standing committees, BFP and MVE standing committees. And then the most important one is the technical advisory group, but I can give you more details when we get there in a few minutes. So the first one is the building code tag. The last time, so Todd Bayruter is the new technical advisory group chair, and Roger volunteered to be a member of the technical advisory group. And the question is if there is another council member that wants to be a member, another council member who wants to volunteer.
Micah, go ahead. You have your hand up? No? Okay.
I did. I'd skip it. I'm good. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Are there any council members that would like to volunteer to be on the building technical advisory group?
Here is the clarifying language below the table.
Okay. And we're meeting that right now as we have 2 on there. So if there are no others, oh, go ahead, Todd.
Thank you. Maybe another question. So I seem to remember before I stepped into the chair position, I was also representing I was representing manufacturing. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. But it's open now because you are the technical advisory group chair. You are representing the council, and we can appoint another representative of manufacturers.
Okay, and just we're having some success filling some of the vacant positions, but we had a handful. I think I'm counting at least 10 positions here, and I think we probably still have 8 that are needed. So if anyone's interested, especially with, well, we can go through the list if you'd like, but
the council doesn't need to vote on the technical advisory group members. Again, the exception is the council members, but for the rest of the members, the council approves the seats, but the chair, the technical advisory group chair, approves the members of the technical advisory group.
Okay, thank you.
So the position is open. That's correct. Your old position, Todd, and we have, I think, 8 other vacancies. Roger suggested 2 names, which was very helpful. Thank you, Roger. But we have 8 more that need to be filled.
Roger, are you good, or did you have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, Stoyan kind of answered my question, which is how do the rest of the positions get filled? And yes, I am trying to take that. I'm trying to see if I can't find other people to fill those positions and may be able to fill some of them. So
Thank you for your efforts, Roger. Appreciate it. Micah, go ahead.
So I had two questions. So with Todd being the chair and Roger being listed on here, do we have to vote for Roger to be a member of the IBC tag?
We did on the previous meeting on April
Okay.
22nd.
That clarified. I thought that was the case. I just wasn't sure and wanted to ask today. And then I do want to mention about the tags in this group and to the public that we are looking for members for every tag, especially some members from the east side. I know that's always been a big struggle, but if you know anybody, it's not just the code officials or anything else. It's private industry. It's the public. And we really need that tag membership to be boosted a little bit. So if anybody has any recommendations, please send them to us. That's my 2 cents.
If we received a resume or interest from somebody to be a technical advisory group member, even if we don't have this particular seat approved by the council, we can have it for approval any of the council meetings. So, you know, if especially technical experts on you know, any construction, consulting, anything, because some of the technical advisory groups are really one-sided, and it's not, I don't want to use this term as offensive, but we need the balance of the technical advisory groups. We need different viewpoints, we need different opinions, and this is how a good language, a good code language can be developed.
Okay, Chell, go ahead.
Yeah, if you go to the State Building Code Council website and you click on, what is it? Where is it? Yeah, click on that. Then you can click on current IBC tag members, and then it will show you at the very bottom, there's lots of vacant seats. And that's true of, well, lots of tags have that, all the tags have that list. And so you can find out where the vacancies are so you can help out Todd and others.
We will update the technical advisory group list in the next few days. So I assume on Monday our list will be updated.
Excellent. Okay, well, that's good conversation, and there's a lot of good information that comes out there. And this recording will be available to the public that's not here, and hopefully we can get some good members signed up that have some good input for our tags.
The other thing that I wanted to mention, and this is for the council members, you can see the website on the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, so when we go to the residential code and the technical advisory group members, so it was updated, but you see how short this list is, you know? So for some reason, we have 20 seats for the building code technical advisory group, and we have like 10 for the residential code. And very often we have like, you know, decisions made by 3-2 votes. That's not okay. So if I'm asking the council members, you know, if you think about any other seat that we can add here, technical professionals, whatever, anybody that can help, then we can update the list. The energy code has, I don't know, 25 members, and we have like, you know, less than 10 are participating in the residential code, and that's an important code. The plumbing code is even worse. We have like 6 or something. So anything, you know, council members, anything you can do to help with that will be really, really appreciated.
Excellent. Thank you, Stoyan. Go ahead, Micah.
I do want to parrot Stoyan a little bit on the residential code and just inform maybe some of the new members are not aware. Jurisdictions are not allowed to modify the residential code by state law without approval from the State Building Code Council. However, that is different for the building code. They can modify that without approval from the State Building Code. So just to show the importance of why the residential code is so important, the only place it can obtain any significant changes is through the state process. So it would be nice to have more tag members there, so more folks are voting to make, you know, those changes to the residential code. So thanks.
Thank you, Micah. Okay, Stoyan, you want to move on to the next?
The next one is the fire code tag. So Tony is the technical advisory group chair, and we don't have any council members attending these meetings.
Okay, is there any interest from council members at this time to be added to the fire code tag? It's really not that bad, I promise. It might be. Roger, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually would be willing to be on that as well.
Okay.
Tony.
Excellent. Does that take council action then? So we need a vote on that.
Yes, we do.
Okay, is there any others that would like to be on the tag and maybe we could vote on it as a whole?
Voting on the whole slate at the end might be a good move.
Okay, I like that too. Let's do that. Okay, thank you, Roger, for volunteering there. Okay, let's go ahead and jump to the next one.
Energy. That's a good one.
That is a good one.
When does this one meet?
So there's actually two. Why don't I just talk for a minute? There's actually two energy code tags. And I don't know if we want to differentiate between the two of them, but there's a commercial tag and they have different slots for representatives than the residential code energy code. And so I guess, I don't know how we want to deal with that, but there's the commercial energy code tag met last year and this year to get the commercial energy code, and it's probably 8 or 9 meetings of 6 or 7 hours each, plus a lot of homework for some people. The residential code meets a little bit less, but we're going to have about 5 meetings of 6 or 7 hours. We've already had 2 of those 5 meetings. And then the last 3 will be the next 3 weeks, next 3 Fridays from 8:30 to 2 o'clock.
Okay, thank you for the clarification there, Chell. Damon, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to volunteer for the energy code tag. That's what I've been specializing in for the last 12 years, and I think I could offer some assistance there.
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Okay, which one, commercial or residential?
Yes. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to speak for you, Damon.
That's quite all right. Residential. Residential is my request.
The commercial energy code tag is essentially finished at this point. So it's just residential going forward for this code cycle.
Okay, are there any other council members that would like to jump on the residential energy code tag?
I hope I wrote the name right.
You did well.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move on to the next.
Residential code tag.
Okay.
I don't want to bite off too much as the new guy, but there again is something that I'm very familiar with. I've been training builders since 2009 cycle on code changes for residential, so I would lend my expertise there as well.
Okay.
David? Is there anyone else for residential? Okay, excellent. Move on.
Plumbing. Corey is the chair. There is no other council members there.
Okay, plumbing code tag.
I will
Lonely.
Uh,
I will offer donuts for the next time.
Yeah, maybe I could do corn dogs.
Okay, going once, twice.
Okay. Mechanical code. Caroline is the chair.
Okay, any council members that would like to be part of the mechanical tag? Okay. Moving on.
So the we code, I will keep it for the end because it's a little bit more complicated. So let's complete the standing committee. So now we are moving to the standing committees, and here is the detail here. Okay, so the building, fire, and plumbing code committee shall include the council chair and chairs of the building, fire, plumbing, and residential code technical advisory groups. For this, we may need to change the bylaws, but before I get to the bylaws, so currently we have Todd, who is the building code chair. We have Tony, who is the vice chair and also fire code technical advisory group chair, Micah, Corey, and Robert Hamlin. He's not chairing any technical advisory group, but he volunteered to be a member of this committee. So we are missing the council chair here, and we need to pick and appoint a technical advisory group committee chair. Usually it is the building code tag chair, but it's not necessary, it's not mandatory. So, and the other thing here, we cannot have more than 7 council members in each standing committee because 8 council members make the quorum. Okay, so currently we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we can have 2 more. Well, with the council chair, we have 6, but it depends. So we'll keep the council chair in yellow for now, because I assume the next time we will have a formally appointed chair and a vice chair.
Okay, Micah.
I have a couple items on this, especially about the bylaws, but first, my last name has 2 P's and 2 L's, if you don't mind, on that list. And
So,
then
Micah, apologize. I corrected your name, these 10 different documents, but I missed that one.
that's okay. I'm not worried about it. Not the end of the world. I do have a bylaw questions change on this. Since Tony will technically be the chair of 2 tags, I guess if we're going to look at an option of changing the bylaws, I would like to ask if we include something like on the BFP committee that we can fill it with other council members that are not chairs of the tag, as long as we don't exceed that 7 number that you mentioned, just because obviously Tony can't duplicate himself and be a chair of 3 different things and still have a good, what I would think is a good makeup of the BFP committee. So that would be my thoughts on the bylaw change. However, I don't want to, obviously sit here and create a bylaw change today, but if you're going to develop that, could we please include something like that?
I think as a personal opinion, again, I'm not an attorney. I think you can fill the positions with council members without being a member, technical advisory group chairs, without any change to the bylaws. I mean, again, Robert Hamlin is a good example. He's a council member, but he's not a technical advisory group chair. Micah, is it what your concern is?
You're on mute, Micah.
I was just going based off the information you provided at the bottom, that the makeup is supposed to be the chairs.
Yeah, but
if that's not bylaws, then
it is in the bylaws, but also here is the bylaw. Here it is. Okay.
Okay, so it's a shall be issue, but there's nothing that allows us to add additional council members and allow them to vote according
It
to the
does say
bylaws.
shall include, though.
Shall include. It doesn't say yes. So
if that's how you interpret it, I'm good. I'll be quiet. Thanks.
No, there is another section in the bylaws that clarifies that. I just don't have it on the screen.
Okay.
But I think we're good with that. The issue with the bylaws is what are we doing with the WUI, which will be a new technical advisory group. This is the text in the bylaw, and it specifically states which technical advisory groups. So we'll have the WUI technical advisory group with no representation anywhere else. So this is my proposal, if I can make a proposal for the bylaw changes. Just add the WUI technical advisory group to the building, fire and plumbing committee.
Is the WUI tag intended to live for cycles after this, or is it just to fix what's been put in place? The reason I ask is because do we need to go through a bylaw change, being that I'm the chair of both of those tags, and if this is a one-time tag, then the representation is taken care of by default, I guess. At this time.
The WUI tag wasn't intended to be one-time tag, because the decision by the council was to make the WUI code a standalone code. So it's currently part of the fire code, and the decision was to make it as a standalone code. So if we continue with that, then we will need the technical advisory group, a permanent technical advisory group.
Understood. Joe?
Maybe a dumb question, but usually the committees have a purview over certain codes, and I'm just assuming the BFP has purview of over the WUI. Like the WUI will go through the tag, then it will go through this committee, then to the council. Is that the general?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. Yeah, so that makes sense that we would add the WUI chair to this, to me at least.
Okay. Is it out of order to take council action on the bylaw change for this now, being that it's not a agenda item? Are we good with that? Do we do this in other business? How do you think the best way to handle that is?
I discovered this last night, so I didn't have time to prepare. Again, as a personal opinion, I think it's not specifically stated in the agenda, but it's part of the it's part of this agenda item. It's
understood. Okay.
It's
Katie? Sorry. Go ahead, Katie.
Why can't we, if this is just a one-time committee, why can't we just add that chair just for this cycle?
No,
it's not. Okay,
No,
so it
that's
is
the
going to be
problem.
it's
Yeah.
not it's going to be a permanent committee now. Okay, I see.
Yes.
All right, that makes sense then.
Micah, go ahead.
It sounds like we could make a motion on this based off of the agenda. So I'd like to make a motion that we modify the bylaws to include the WUI code chair or WUI code tag chair on the BFP committee.
Okay, and Damon?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Micah, would you like to speak to that?
No, I think we've covered the information. Thanks, Tony.
Okay, Damon, would you like to speak to your second?
We're good.
Okay, discussion from rest of council? Okay, let's do a roll call.
Okay, so we have Shell Anderson,
Yes.
Jay Arnold,
Yes.
Todd Bayreuther,
Aye.
Micah Chappelle,
Yes.
Damon Doyle,
Aye.
Bob Hamlin,
Aye.
Roger Haringa,
Aye.
Craig Holt. It's not back.
Aye.
Oh, you are back. Pete Reiki,
Aye.
Katie Chuhan,
Yes.
Carolyn Traub,
Aye.
and Corey Wilker.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 12 ayes, 0 nays. Okay, so Stoyan, as far as further council action on the WUI, is there anything else we're looking for for this specific tag from council today?
We need a BFP chair. The council chair is a member of this committee, but the council chair doesn't assume the role of a BFP chair. So for example, Andrew was the BFP chair before he became an acting council
Understood.
chair.
So, okay, so right now we're looking for a motion for a chair for this. Okay, got it. Micah?
I don't normally volunteer, folks, but I think Corey would be fabulous in that role.
Okay,
If he's willing.
Okay, we have a motion. Looking for a second.
I want to ask him first before I make that motion, Tony.
Okay.
So if Corey's on, if he's interested in that, if not, we'll go someone else.
Yeah, I think I've attended most of them. I think I can make sure that I'm there.
Okay. Thank you, Corey.
Awesome. Then I'll make that motion that Corey be chair of the BFP committee.
Okay.
Thanks, Corey.
I will pay you back, Micah.
I assumed as much.
And this is Bob Hamlin. I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Open it up for discussion. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay,
Aye.
thank you. Any against? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Corey. Appreciate it.
We have one more seat available if there is another council member who wants to volunteer. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we can have 7.
Okay. Is there any other council members that are interested in the BFP committee? Micah?
I'm not going to volunteer anyone, but could you give a short informational on what the BFP committee does? That way, maybe some of the new members that, maybe they think it's a ton of work or too much work or something, but just an informational on what the BFP committee does and how often they meet, maybe that would spur someone to volunteer.
I will use an example with the current technical advisory group. So currently the technical advisory groups are working on the new code proposals for group 2. So the technical advisory group will make recommendations, adopt as modified, or reject whatever the whatever the recommendation is, and then it goes to the BFP standing committee. And the BFP standing committee have the debate, have the discussion, and refers the technical advisory group recommendations to the council, or rejects the technical advisory group. So the standing committee, BFP standing committee, is the next step between the technical advisory group and the council. If you go to the website, you don't need to do it now, but the bylaws are clearly, it's a good language that describes what the standing committees, what their role is. And it's not crazy with, based on the number of meetings. Usually we have the standing committees, the standing committee meetings the day before the council meeting, or we will make some effort to make it a week before the council meetings, but typically it's once per month.
Okay, thank you, Stein. Todd, go ahead.
Micah, do you want to follow up on that first? Okay.
Yeah, if you're talking about what Stoyan just said, sure. I was just going to add to that I'll look at it a little different way, because we do a lot of the technical work at the tag. the BFP does do some technical work, but in my opinion, it's kind of a way to see the code changes without having to spend as much time at the tag level. And that way it may be a good way to get, your feet wet kind of deal in identifying or working on a lot of these technical code changes without having to spend as much time at the tag meetings. So just another point of why somebody should volunteer for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Micah. Go ahead, Todd.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, two parts. One, reinforcing what Micah just said. I want to really commend both Shell and excuse me, Carolyn, on the MVE tag last year, really watching them navigate in this committee and be able to push things back down to the tag. And I thought that was a valuable lesson for me to understand what the committees do. My question here is, don't we have 5 right now? And is Tony is filling the council chair position?
If Tony is filling the council chair position, yes, we have 5.
So we have 2 positions available.
If we don't count, yes, 2 positions. If, I was trying to go to a formal way, so.
Oh, okay, so sorry.
2 positions.
Thank you.
And Peter?
Yeah, some of my hesitancy in volunteering for these is an uncertainty about how the whole process works over a long time frame. Will this be the only opportunity we have to get on a tag or a council? Or will this subject matter come back up again when I have a little bit clearer idea of where I want to play a role? It
can come back at any time. I don't even need to include it in the agenda for the meetings. We can do it under other business. It's an easy task. It doesn't.
Well, my plan is basically to, participate in the meetings as a non-voting member. And then when I find, if I can contribute something intelligent, then, maybe become a member of that Tagger Council.
You can do that at any meeting.
Thank you, Peter. Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I was told and that being a member wouldn't be all that rough, and it's been true. It hasn't been rough. It was one of those groups that has been helpful for me to understand the whole process. So I think if Peter's got those concerns, this is a good group to be with. You'll learn a lot, and you won't be inundated with too much.
Thank you, Robert. Go ahead, Roger.
I will volunteer to be on that, although I've already volunteered on a couple of other spots.
We appreciate it, Roger. And Katie?
Yeah, you guys are convincing me. I'll join that one.
Excellent.
Did I spell it right?
Looks like it, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
MV. We have Phil and Anthony, and both of them are no longer with the council. And the council chair is unfilled. So I can add Tony for now, and then we'll see Tony. Okay. And we have 2 seats available.
So just real quick on this, the MVE is the same concept as the building, fire, plumbing. It's just for the different tags, just for new council members. So Chal, go ahead.
Yeah, the MVE committee, basically the tag does a majority of the work. The energy code tags do a majority of the work. The MVE reviews it, takes additional public input, and sends packages to the council for consideration and approval. The MVE also considers council opinions sometimes on formerly called interpretations. So sometimes the MVE handles those as well. So it's really not a great deal of work, but it kind of is a great preview for council members of what the energy code issues and realities are before they get to the full council.
Thank you, Joe. Katie?
Yeah, sorry, I think, can I change? I think that's more where my interest lies. I've kind of messed that up. I only have time for one, so
No, understood.
thank you. So
Thank
I'll be
you.
on that one.
Okay, and are there any other council members that would be interested in the MDE? Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'd like to be on this one.
Excellent. Okay, does that fill that one up or?
Yes.
Okay.
That
Damon?
one, so.
I'll go ahead and take Katie's seat on the previous committee.
Perfect. Okay. And Katie and Peter, did you have anything left to say, or I'm not sure if those are residual hands or new ones. Okay. Let's see. I thought I missed someone there, maybe not. Okay.
Okay, moving forward, Ledge Committee. We have one seat. We have the council chair. I'll put Tony here. Chair of the BFP committee.
Is that Corey?
Yeah, Corey. Yeah.
It's Corey, yes. I've been lazy to write it.
Micah, while he's filling that in, go ahead.
Just a curiosity question on the legislative committee. How often does that meet? Is it just before the legislative cycle and during?
It meets during the session. So it starts in January. Most likely it will end up first week of April, if not March. It depends if this is the long or the short session. What I do, I prepare a summary for the proposed bills. I enjoy the meetings, but the Ledge Committee doesn't make the major decisions there because the council is authorized to do that. But Todd can provide more details. He's been a chair of this committee for a long time.
I was just going to add weekly during session.
Yeah, during session weekly. Sorry, I didn't mention that.
Okay. Thanks, Todd. Since I'm already doing a significant level of work on that for Seattle's Department of Construction Inspections and Washington Association of Building Officials, I would be on this committee just because I could probably provide good information on a lot of stuff.
So here you can tell, thank you, Krista. Krista just told me I didn't pay attention. We have Tony as the vice chair and Tony as the council chair, but I will update this after the meeting in June. So we will adjust.
Micah, did you have something further on this?
No, I just said I'd volunteer on this one.
Okay, excellent. And Representative Ramel, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Is it helpful to have ex officio legislators on this committee? Is that a request, or is that valuable, or would be sort of duplicative to have us there?
In my personal opinion, it will be really beneficial because you know the information from the Senate or the House of Representatives firsthand, and it's always helpful if you can provide details. But as ex officios, you can't vote and you can attend, Alex, any meeting at any time without a special appointment of the council.
Gotcha. Okay.
would be happy to try and attend these meetings. I heard weekly during the legislative session that might be difficult to do, but would like to participate as much as I can. I think that's
Usually,
kind of
usually we meet
reasonable.
on Fridays, Friday, 11 o'clock, and it takes about no longer than 1 hour. Usually less than that.
Okay, well, if it's helpful, go ahead and sign me up for this. I will do my best to participate in those. If it doesn't take a special appointment, you just want to invite me to them, I'm happy to do my best to attend then as well. Either way, your call.
Thank you, Representative Rommel. Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, just from the perspective of the chair, absolutely welcome that, Representative Rommel. And I think we, you'll find it's really, we have great kind of discussion and really add commentary from the lens of obviously of the codes. And then we can be flexible on timing. I'm quite confident to work around committee schedules. So we'd be happy to do that.
Excellent. Peter, go ahead.
I meant legislative committee schedules is what to clarify.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of clarify what the legislative committee does. So my interpretation is that the council takes a vote or is working on particular subject matter, then the legislative committee basically acts as a go-between between the council and the legislatures to explain the details behind that. Is that the general gist of things?
Yes and no at the same time, and Todd can correct me if I'm wrong. How I see it, and I'll play my wild card here. This is the second year I did that, so I can't use the same card saying I'm new, but I'm still new with that process. And I try to provide summaries of the proposed bills. Some of these bills are important. The problem is, again, the Ledge Committee don't make the decision. It goes to the council, but the council meets once per month. And the session is really fast moving. So very often we don't have the time for the council to make any decision because that bill is already gone. Well, not gone, but just past the process.
Thank you, Stoyan, for that explanation. Chael, go ahead.
I'll just add also that Stoyan and staff do provide input to the legislature from time to time when asked about how bills might affect the council or in other ways. And so this functionally, in my experience, that this group and the council don't take action on bills like we support this or we oppose this, but we do provide input on how this would affect the council's business, as well as some stakeholders and some technical language as well. So that's just my experience.
Thank you, Chael. Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, well put, Shell. Reinforcing that, and from someone who has been a public employee before, this is really, this committee informs, if asked, both the council and informs the legislature. Rarely doesn't have the power to take position unless it brings it back to the full council for action. So it's really that informing, both from the agency side in terms of Stoyan and the impact that would be on staff and so forth, and of course perspective on from a code rulemaking standpoint, if asked for the actual policy.
I do bill analysis for DES, and I do bill analysis for the council. The DES is more formal. For the council, excuse me, for the council, sometimes the position of the council and the position of DES don't align. This is understandable, but I try to inform the council what the DES position is and vice versa. And these meetings really help me to touch the water, test the water, and understand what the council position could be. So these meetings are very helpful for me. And again, I enjoy the conversations. I hope the council members that are members of the Ledge Committee find these meetings beneficial as well.
Okay, thank you. So there is an opening here then, correct?
Yeah, we have one more.
Okay, so is there anyone, any council members who would like to be added to this? Okay, moving on.
Okay. So for the executive committee, we don't need to appoint anybody. The executive committee, it's a fixed a deal. So I will upload this table, and again, that will be still undecided. We have the chair right here, so I need to upload it.
Okay.
Work group on economic impact. That's an interesting one. It was used in 2015. It wasn't used in 2018, and it was used again this as a group. It was used again for 2021 energy code. And currently we have one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Currently, we have 7 members here, and we will keep open the council chair and Tony. So I will update this table after the next council meeting. So if the council can vote on everything until everything that we addressed now, and then I will have the WUI as a standalone item.
Okay. Excellent. Go ahead, Joe.
I'll make a motion that we approve the slate of candidates as discussed and as documented on this document in the meeting today, with the caveat that staff will update positions within here to new positions based on the slate of candidates considered today, as well as based on any updates to this in future votes.
Okay,
Is that clear?
I think we got it. Yeah, thank you, Joe.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second, a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Oh, point of order, actually.
Yeah.
We still needed to discuss the WUI code tag. Is that correct, Stoyan?
Yes, that's correct. So I want to keep it separately.
A separate motion from the
Separate
one.
motion, yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, any against? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, Stoyan, you want to jump to the WUI?
Moving to the WUI code, you'll see different interesting colors here. So the WUI is not established. The WUI technical advisory group is not established yet. And here you will see the seats that you need to vote on. However, you don't need to approve this table as it is, because the seats, they weren't really researched. It was based on brainstorming and taking different viewpoints and different opinions. So if you believe that we need to change somebody, that's the time to do it. We received, well, I was going to say many, but the applications we received are less than the number of the seats that are here for discussion. So in red right here, you will see application tied to a particular seat. Okay, so Department of Natural Resources, we have one application. Building official west side, we have one. For manufacturer supplier, we have 2. One is showing fenestration industry, the other one windows. We have fire protection engineer. We have 1 fire marshal from the east side. Nothing here. We have 1 application for home builder, and the applicant is saying that he can also be considered a general contractor. This is the same person. We have 1 application for a firefighter, and then we have civil engineer, another Washington State Department of Natural Resources, and then Washington Realtors, a real estate broker, and sales lead, Owens Corning. These applications are here, these 5, because they don't they don't align with the number of the seats that are and type of the seats proposed here. So there are several options here, but for these applications, if you want, you can establish a seat based on the applications that we have received, or you can shorten, cut off some of the seats right here. You have several options.
I think quickly on the representative groups, when we originally discussed this, if I remember correctly, the idea was we wanted to be safely heavy or exhaustive on who was able to join, because we wanted a good representative group. And so I think that's kind of the reason for that long list of different industries or representative groups. So that being said, I know there's a couple of general public, so maybe some of those applications out of those 5 can be put into the general public depending on location. And then we could look at kind of what's left there. Roger, go ahead.
Can you just remind me what this tag is? What are the IU stand for?
The International Wildland Urban Interface Code. And so it's the basically the construction requirements and vegetation requirements for those areas, for the wildland areas. And
currently, this code is an appendix to the fire code, and the decision was to make it a standalone code. This is why we are establishing this technical advisory group now.
Thank you, Svein. Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that I believe this code tag will become quite important in the future. Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife has put out a 2-volume series on what riparian habitats, for example, look like along river shores in both western and eastern Washington. The interface in our city in Pasco between buildings and that area is an issue of contention. There are often fires that endanger houses. But when I look at who's on here, I don't see folks who fight wildfires professionally. And I don't see necessarily the folks who can comment on what the biological impacts, the habitat impacts of those code changes might be. So I'm a little bit concerned that we have too much representation of the building side of things and not necessarily a good representation of the wildlands side of things.
Thank you, Peter. Chael, go ahead.
I was just going to make two quick comments. One is, I think we referred to it earlier as the WUI tag, not the IWUI tag, just for clarification. And then I guess from the energy code perspective, we have lots and lots of people on the tag, and we've filled almost all the seats. But in years past, we've had lots of seats unfilled, like this, and it really skews how things are considered when you have lots and lots of seats and only half of them are filled. So I guess I'd advocate for having fewer seats if we don't think we're gonna fill them.
Thank you, Joe. Robert?
Yeah, I'm living here in the National Scenic Area in the Columbia River Gorge, and it's going to be interesting because the Gorge Commission has, as one of their primary goals, is visual subordination of structures within the scenic area, and so that calls for some vegetation to be left in place. And we always have conflicts between trying to hide some of the residences versus keeping them fire safe and defensible space. So it's going to be an interesting process as we go through this.
Thank you, Robert. Micah?
Sounds like Robert needs to be attending the tag meetings for sure on this one. Yeah, we are struggling to get folks on this tag. I did reach out to the executive director of Washington Association of Building Officials to see if we can fill that role. But I do know, kind of to Peter's point, that some of the folks from fire that will be on here do represent a good area of that. I know, I want to say Yakima County, I think they applied his name's Rich Elliott, and they have done some work on implementing a wildland urban interface code for that county already. So there's a lot of work done there, and we've had lots of outreach to him. So I think that I agree with Chael. If we're not going to fill the positions, that maybe we should cut back a few, and hopefully we can get some of those other entities involved and not have it skewed one way. So thanks.
Thanks, Micah. For clarification's sake, quickly, Stoyan, is there an application period that is closed at this time?
No, it's not closed. It's still open. We can clarify the message, but
okay,
we can keep it open.
Thank you. Carolyn?
Yeah, just more general questions, Stoyan. When these lists of kind of representatives are developed, is that something that staff has primarily held as their responsibility for all the tags, right? Just because the availability of seats obviously varies by tag. And I'm just curious if we have a defined process for when certain seats get added or deleted.
No, we don't have a defined process for this particular one. I know Ray worked with Tony and he reached out to other entities. So I got the list when it was already established.
Okay, so with that, as far as council action goes, Stoyan, are we looking for dwindling, approving, adding? What's the council ask today?
Everything that you just said.
Okay.
we need to approve the seats and start filling the seats because we need to get this proposals done by, I think it was June 10th, in order to make the proposals available for the council meeting in June. I think it was June 17th. And we don't have time. And if we don't succeed for June 17th, then we will need special meetings because we don't have anything scheduled. I mean, no council meeting is scheduled for July and August. It's difficult to have the quorum in July and August because of the vacation season. So that's why it's an urgent request to approve the seats and then start filling the position and start working on the proposals.
Okay, Micah, go ahead.
Can you scroll through the list kind of slowly? Seems like we're only looking about half of it, Stoyan.
Yes, it's a long list. This is why.
Yeah, I think if we're going to try to parse out some of the positions, I'd like to see all of them. However, I really struggle with east side, west side stuff on some of it. I think that's important. So
the east side, west side was suggested at the last council meeting on April 22nd. It was a council recommendation. So this is why I added the east and west side. I can't remember who made the motion, but.
Micah?
So if we have to drop some seats, I know this is going to sound crazy. I think we should drop the sprinkler seat because the proposal is recommending that we don't adopt the sprinkler portion of the WUI code based on current laws that allow jurisdictions to already adopt sprinkler code. So, I mean, if I hate to say that kind of stuff, but knowing the proposal, since my name's on it, I think if we have to do stuff like that, maybe we start dropping things like that. I'm open to other suggestions too.
Sorry, to jump on that, Micah, real quick. What do you think of alarm industry?
I don't think that's needed either. I mean, that's an alternative path, really. And there's not an alarm requirement for certain things. So I would be okay with that too. Good point, Tony.
That's my initial thought. Roger, go ahead.
I have similar concerns to Peter's, and maybe I don't quite understand the extent or all of the details of this particular code, but if we are talking about developing a code that discusses the interaction of developed places and waterways, that kind of stuff, a water biologist or something from that type of an industry seems appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Can I jump on that before we move forward? I don't want to jump in front of others if they want to talk to that point.
Go ahead, Micah.
I know that the DNR mapping, and when you look at the WUI areas and having to determine if you are in intermix or interface area, that the water is excluded from that portion. They don't take that into account. a lot of this has to do with vegetation and vegetation percentages and distance from your structure to those vegetation percentages. And if you are within a certain distance or within that certain vegetation percentage, then you're going to have to meet certain construction criteria. If you're going to go as far as doing vegetation reduction, that's a separate plan that is allowed within that code. But really, I don't think we're going to get into that, you know, the water areas and how it affects those. It really has to do strictly with vegetation and structures only. And that's what that code covers. Just some information there.
And just to add quickly to what Mike is saying, one way that I've explained the WUI in the past is you want to prevent a house fire from starting a wildland fire and vice versa. That's to me like the nutshell of that code. So it just kind of adds to that. Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I probably am going to want to be on this committee because we've seen here in the Columbia River Gorge a few years ago the Eagle Creek fire, and for years it was an east side, west side kind of debate on where wildland fires were going to be the most problematic. The east side always had more pine. We had what we used to refer to as an asbestos forest in the Gifford Pinchot, that it wasn't going to burn more than a few hundred acres at a time. But what we've seen in the last several years, like I say, with the Eagle Creek fire, was 80,000 acres burned on the Oregon side, and whole towns, the town of Cascade Locks, being jeopardized. So this gets into a lot of things as far as building materials. And again, in a scenic area, they don't allow for metal roofing, which is really one of the better materials for preventing fire transmission. But it's a lot of issues here. And I think this is going to be a lot of discussion before we come up with something that's really the best code.
Thank you, Robert. Stoyan, you might add in a line for Mr. Hamlin. Todd, go ahead.
Could you scroll up, please, while I make my comment?
Yeah.
Thank you. I would put my opinion in that I don't think the east and west side is for each of those disciplines are critical. I think most of these disciplines operate and have knowledge on both sides of the state. I would advocate, if it's not in there, for conservation, land conservation specialist. And I think I can help nominate someone that would be willing. And then perhaps more of a landscape architect that deals in these. So again, maybe cutting some of these west side duplicates and proposing those two positions.
What if we took the what if we took away the west side, east side for architect, and we changed it to landscape architect, and then the one that you suggested there for the conservation, was that the one?
Yeah, and I would, yeah, I think that's a great idea, Tony. And then I would add that I'm not sure the distinction between a home designer and an architect in this role.
Agreed. And we're going to change and then we're going to add one for conservation, right, Todd? Is that what you're thinking?
I'd propose that for discussion. Yeah, land conservation specialist.
Okay, are we missing anything there, Todd? Do you have another one?
Just on the bottom would be the question of whether or not the home builder is redundant.
Agreed.
No, I'm not home builder, I'm home designer. Thank you.
Did I miss a council member who volunteered?
Robert Hamlin.
Okay. What about the home designer? Just take it out.
Let's do let's just for now red line, like scratch out home designer, alarm and sprinkler industry, and then we'll bring it all up for discussion after we kind of settle after comments. Okay, and Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I mean, as far as the water interface goes, that really kind of defines half of our fire danger on the east side of the mountains is that we have a 100-foot zone between the river and homes, and that is where the fires burn and start for about half of it. The other half is essentially cheatgrass fires that burn for, you know, thousands and thousands of acres, but usually are caused by automobiles or you know, lightning strikes or things like that. But yeah, I also would like to suggest the addition of a wildlife biologist of some sort, somebody who has an understanding of ecology and habitat into this mix here.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. Shale, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm struggling. What's the difference between a fire marshal and a fire chief? We have 4 of those people.
The fire marshal is more prevention, and fire chief is going to be more administrative incident command once the emergency has started.
Okay, so having
Generally speaking,
4 of those, 2 of each, I guess, is probably a good thing because a lot of this is about fire. I was also wondering if we wanted to prune a bit. Do we need a building official east and west, or city county east and west, just to make sure that we can get appointments and that kind of thing?
Yes, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, personally. Peter, go ahead. Mike,
I guess I was gonna also suggest building official, city, county, and home builder. You could probably have 1 of each rather than east and west for each.
Okay.
So we had this discussion a lot, Chael. I'm on the fence on some of those, and I know I represent code officials, but if this goes into play, I mean, this really affects certain cities on the east side much, or, you know, even smaller jurisdictions much differently for a code official as it would for, say, Seattle. I mean, it's surprising enough, people go, there's wildland interface in Seattle. Absolutely. It's mapped. And so we've overlaid the current DNR map with our GIS, and we have several thousand parcels in the city that this will affect. So maybe I would say we could change that from building official to code official. That way, folks that look at this list don't think that they have to be a building official. They could, you know, anybody that enforces the code is considered a code official. And that'd be my recommendation. It is important, though, just based on the enforcement of the code and how that is different on the east side and west side, to maintain the east side and west side for that code official. That's kind of my 2 cents. But it's not vital. Of course, right now we only have 1 application, so it may not be relevant anyway. And then I kind of question the addition of the wildlife biologist for Peter that you mentioned. Wouldn't that be covered by the DNR representative that is on the board or on this tag? Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. I'm not sure what their role would be, but that seems like that's what that representative would cover.
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, my understanding is DNR was basically your GIS expert, not necessarily a wildlife expert. So I wanted to make sure, you know, that person could do both duties. But my understanding was the DNR folk were the experts in the mapping, not necessarily in the wildlife aspect.
Yeah. Roger, go ahead. Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Sorry, I see 2 home builders and 2 general contractors, east and west. And that seems to me like those, you could do 1 of each, or maybe the home builders east and west, but I don't see how general contractors have a significant difference in east and west in accommodating. And then I was going to say, you know, we have a whole lot of back to the wildlife biologist or whatever that position is, we've got a lot of overlapping on here. I don't see why adding somebody, assuming we could find somebody, but having that kind of representation on the tag could only add to it rather than just relying on the DNR to fill that role. So.
Okay. Thank you, Roger. Katie, go ahead.
Yeah, two things to that second point of yours, Roger. I just had to call in on a question about wildlife, and they directed me to Department of Fish and Wildlife, and that was very clear that that's separate from DNR. So that might be the place where that lives. The other thing is, in terms of the east and west side, I mean, maybe we do this sort of like what we did with the council itself, and just say, there needs to be 5 or however many 6 representatives from the east and west side in these areas, so that it's not, so we don't, limit it, but understanding that there's expertise in each one of those things. I get it, but maybe that's one way to get that east and west side representation equalized without getting too specific.
Thank you, Katie. Micah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we could eliminate one of the code official positions and just add me as a council member to this tag.
Okay. Okay. Do we want to get rid of the general contractor and home builder east west and just call it one position? Or because I think Roger mentioned that, and I think that's one way too to get rid of a couple. Go ahead, Roger.
That's what I would propose. And home builder, I'm on the fence. I would kind of lean towards the same thing.
Okay.
And
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And then I actually like Katie's the Department of Wildlife, Fish and Wildlife, adding that. That's fits exactly what I was thinking of, getting that representation. So.
Perfect. Krista, go ahead.
Well, part of the reason for having both the general contractor and the home builders is to provide a little bit of balance to the 4 to 6 fire side equation. So there's a little bit more of a balance in the representation. So just keep that in mind as well.
Okay, thank you. Just as a proposal, Stoyan, let's take the home builder and just turn that, scroll up. So we have home builder, east side, west side. Just for now, let's just make it one home builder, just like we did general contractor.
Okay.
Todd, go ahead.
Thank you. Is the county city position, is that meant to be an elected official or, potentially like a city planner?
I think the intent was to leave it general enough where it could be represented by anybody that holds that.
Okay. That addresses it, because my question would be, we don't have city planning record, development code anyone here, and maybe they fit under just code. I don't know if official, but I mean code development. And
yeah, and I would consider them under county city too, probably. I mean, yeah.
I'm trying to think who would represent the Growth Management Act here, and the urban growth boundaries and so forth in this list of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Micah?
So listening to a lot of the comments, I think that we should eliminate one code official, eliminate one fire marshal, eliminate one fire chief, and eliminate one county city. I think we're gonna probably not get enough applications for those positions. And it would seem like the fire chiefs could, maybe their nominee or this nominee works with the Fire Chiefs Association of Washington, and the fire marshal may work with the Fire Marshals Association of Washington, and same with the code official. So I think we could eliminate those, and that would eliminate 3 additional positions on the board.
Okay,
And maybe the emergency management, I'm not sure if that couldn't be represented by the fire folks on here.
okay. Thank you, Micah. Let's go ahead and do that, Stoyan.
And if I need to repeat that story, let me know.
Let's see where I will get stuck. Okay, so we don't want more than one code official. You said city and county.
Emergency management as well. You already passed it. Go back up. I'll go down the line with you. Strike emergency management. Strike fire marshal.
One fire marshal.
Yep. 1 county, city.
Okay.
1 of your fire marshals still needs to have the strike through story, and you undid it, unfortunately.
Okay.
And then scroll down, please. Strike 1 of the fire chiefs as well, please. Thank you. That's my recommendation, of course.
Thank you, Micah. Damon, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna, number one, echo Krista's thoughts, but with the motion, with Micah, what Micah just proposed, we have more balance. I didn't want to see it weighted super heavy toward fire protection and not toward builders. I might also add that perhaps putting a developer in here might be a good addition.
We have real estate, 2 applications.
Okay.
I know it's not a developer, I'm just saying.
I'll
Scroll
just
up.
throw that out there for comment. And
Yeah.
it's the actual, plat developers that are going to be running up against this. Once the development is in, then, the urban interface is already in place.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to add it?
Go ahead, Micah.
I think that's a fine addition. Yeah, I think that would work as well. Thanks, David. I think that's a good idea. I don't know if it will affect them very much, but I think if they could have a seat at the table, if somebody applies, that would be fine. I think the developers are really the ones that could modify the vegetation to actually get them out of wildland urban interface or intermix, depending on the size of the development. So that's probably a good plan.
Okay. Okay. So is there any other recommendations at this time?
There is a comment from Amy. I flagged this opportunity for some groups that work on the GMA. It was the message.
Okay. Okay, so with that, then Stoyan, as far as council action goes, we want to approve these seats, not the applications.
The seat, yes.
Okay. Okay. So looking for a motion.
I'll make that motion. Oh, go ahead, Damien.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Motions from Damon, second is from Micah. Do we have any further discussion on this? Roger, go ahead.
I just have a real quick comment. I mean, I've only been at 1 tag meeting and this is only my 2nd council meeting, but it's not like other people can't attend these tag meetings. So if you had 2 county or city officials that wanted to attend, it's just that only one would be able to vote. Is that correct? So I think there's, we're discussing this, but if there were two county, an east side and a west side city county official that both wanted to participate, it does come down to a final vote, but they still could contribute.
Absolutely.
That's right, yes.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 I,
Okay, any against? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, that moves us to agenda item number 8, which is request for emergency rule, proposed temporary heat pump efficiency reduction.
Before I will show the proposal on the screen, and I hope the proponent is here. We received a few comments in support, so I can show on the screen anything that is requested. But I want to start with, I think this is what we are missing sometimes. This is the requirement in the Administrative Procedures Act pertaining to emergency rules and amendments. And I highlighted the most important one, okay? The immediate adoption, amendment, or repeal of a rule is necessary for the preservation of the public health, safety, or general welfare. And I don't want to torture you with my accent here, but this is very important. So when the council decides whether or not to adopt an emergency rule, I think the first step would be whether or not this rule qualifies as emergency. That's the first thing. And next year, if I'm still around, I will propose changes to the policies and procedures related to emergency rules in order to have a little bit more time for staff and technical advisory groups to do the necessary research for each proposal we get. Because my observation is, since I started in December 2020, I think we have 14 emergency rules, which is not okay. Again, it's a staff opinion on this case. Okay, so now I will move to the emergency rule proposal. Okay, and I can share staff recommendation / research if you need the staff input. So here is the proposal, and I hope the proponent again is here to introduce.
So, and just real quick, maybe that's the best place to start. Is the proponent here that would like to speak to this? There we go. We got some raised hands. Let me see here. Carolyn, I'm going to allow you to talk and ask to unmute, and you should be able to turn your mic on. Go ahead.
Hopefully, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm hoping that Craig Olson is on as well, because he's a little bit more technically savvy on this than I am. So I'm Carolyn Logue. I'm here on behalf of the Washington Air Conditioning Contractors Association. We've put this proposal together, not necessarily just be emergency, but to look at, is there any way to do a structural one-year delay that would kind of move away from the 11.0 HSPF requirement for the energy credits. And that's why I have Craig on here, because I think the people that work in this are going to be a lot more articulate about how this is explained to you. But if you recall, I think you did the emergency rule earlier this year that allowed the occupancy permits to be given because even if the outdoor units were not available, the supply chain issues are continuing. And I know I've been before you before on supply chain issues. It is creating some huge problems. I think I'm not going to reiterate everything in the letter, but I think that we are seeing one of the reasons these are becoming so hard to come by. First of all, It's because the 11.0 of the 800,000 AHRI heat pump systems, only 0.64% actually meet that, which automatically that in and of itself reduces the amount of supply available. Add on to that the microchip shortage for inverter compressors, there's a labor shortage, there's high absenteeism in the factories due to illness still, and Washington State is the only state demanding this equipment for residential energy code. So it's just not a priority for a lot of the factories as well. And so being able to move to some of the more available systems in order to meet the efficiency and energy requirements would be very helpful to our industry. And with that, I'm hoping Craig is there. I don't know if you've seen him raise his hand.
Craig's hand is up and I'll call on him next.
That'd be fantastic. What we're asking for, actually, I don't know if it would be a combination of emergency rule and permanent rule, but actually we'd like the delay to be extended until December of 2023. And I think also maybe in the tags that like the other energy code tags have a discussion somehow of what do we do if the supply is not there of the equipment that meets the codes.
Thank you, Carolyn. And oh, I'm sorry. I think I accidentally muted you, Craig.
Oh, no problem. Hello, everyone. Thanks for hearing this. We appreciate it. I'm the president of Washington NACA, and you know, to kind of follow up on what she said, you know, we're having, you know, a terrible time trying to get matched systems that have an HRI matchup for the 11 HSPF requirement, which the builders, to meet the energy credits required, you know, have designed for their home builds to hit these. And so kind of what we're seeing macroly is the industry also has a efficiency change with SEER 2 and HSPF 2 starting in 2023. That affects the southern climate region first. And so what the manufacturers have been doing is they've been gearing a lot of their production towards those southern region states because they have to be installing at the new requirements starting January 1st, 2023. And so there's less emphasis on, you know, the 11 HSPF equipment. As Carolyn said, there's very, very few systems that meet that. And typically a manufacturer has, you know, maybe 1 or 2 heat pumps that would qualify. And then of course you need the appropriate indoor unit and coil match to hit it. So even if it's, you know, up to 11 or even 12 HSPF, if the coil doesn't match, or it could be at 10.3 or lower or something like that. So I know that we did have a rule to where we would provide occupancy permits without those heat pumps while we wait for the heat pumps. Problem with that is, you know, one, the jobs are, you know, estimated with the builders, assuming, you know, that the house is not occupied, that go back, you know, is not calculated in the price of that job. And so, you know, what's happening is a lot of the housing stock is sitting there waiting for this stuff, not, you know, going out into the market. And from what we're hearing from, you know, our manufacturing partners is that they don't expect this to improve, you know, in the near term. I don't know the exact rule, but I know California is a state where they're moving to where in Southern California, it's going to be heat pump only. That's going to take a bunch of, you know, demand there as well. And it doesn't seem that on the manufacturer side that for the foreseeable future, we just don't forecast them being able to supply the units to, you know, meet the requirement that this, you know, building lot is. So I hope that explained it decently, and happy to answer, you know, questions if, you know, there's some more things that aren't clear with that.
Thank you, Craig. Appreciate it. Do we have any questions for Craig specifically? Micah, go ahead.
Thanks, Craig, for being here. And Carolyn, I'm a kind of a code nerd. However, not so much in the energy code. Can you explain what the difference is between in 8.2 and 11, what is it, HSPF? If you could go back to the other letter, Stoyan, that would be much appreciated. Like I said, I don't know what an HSPF is, so what you're telling me is something I don't even understand. So, and I want to be able to provide the best vote for you. So that would be much appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. So HSPF is essentially a miles per gallon for the heating side, similar to SEER on cooling. So it's heating seasonal performance factor. And I would have to look up exactly, I think it's a blended average of a few different, like the COP, the coefficient, performance of the unit. And so that is the rating there. And so in terms of what, like a COP delta would be between an 8.2 and 11.0 HSPF, I do not have that off the top of my head, and I apologize for that. But I could certainly get you those answers, quickly. I'll fire an email off to our engineer right now to see if he has a little more information on that.
Thank you, Craig. Roger, go ahead.
I think this might be a question for Craig, as I've seen two letters pop up, and I know I looked at them previously. One of the letters seemed to say on the supply side, there was 64% of the heat pumps met the 11, and now I see 0.64%. There's a big difference there if we're considering making an emergency order because of supply demand issues. So I would be curious what between those two numbers which is correct.
So the HRI directory is updated almost daily. And that 0.64% is, the accurate number of when the letter was drafted, which was, in mid-April, so about a month ago. So if I ran those numbers again, which would take me, 5 minutes, but it is 0.64. It's under 1% systems, because you need the heat pump, the inverter heat pump, and then you need a indoor unit, whether it be a gas furnace or an electric air handler, and a coil, and all three of those pieces are rated at the factory to get the HSPF rating for that exact SKU. So even though a heat pump might be, again, rated up to 11 or even 12 HSPF, when you combine it with different indoor equipment and coils, different sizes, so on and so forth, it will change that HSPF for that exact match. And that's where, there's so many different HRI match systems. Is it the right website? Yeah, that's the right website. So you could just put in, just
I did 11.0,
and you can hit search. And it's a little small, but at the bottom it should say how many it returned. It's like 1 out of 1,600 or something like that.
So is it the model status right here?
Yeah, so each one of those is a matched AHRI system. And then at the bottom, where it says showing one of 5,202 entries. So right now we have 5,202 systems that qualify for a 11.0 HSPF. And so if you take out that 11 in the search criteria, that would be all systems in HRI, and that gives you that current number of total systems that are in there, which again changes on a daily basis, I believe.
Well, it's still 5,000 available.
That's kind of my question. Is that 5,000, over 5,000 available units to purchase today?
No, those are systems.
What does that mean?
So those are systems that are matched. So that means that, I could have we're a Bryant dealer. And so Bryant's system that qualifies for 11 HSPF is called a 284 extreme heat pump. And so there's probably 400 different matches, even though there's, 2 ton, 3 ton, 4 ton, 5 ton. But it's matched with 80% furnaces, 90% furnaces, air handlers. With each one of those, there's 3 or 4 different size coils that could, fit in there. So it currently, I just did it without any, parameters. So there's 790,640 total heat pump AHRI match systems. And this is, again, it's brand specific. So I can't take a Bryant 284 extreme heat pump and put it on a Lennox air handler, because there won't be a AHRI matchup, because, each brand only creates those matches for their specific brand, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you. I will put my hand down and I know there's other experts coming down the list with their hand up and see what they ask and see the answers there. Thank you.
Okay, Peter, go ahead.
I would note that an HSPF, if you divide that by 4, you come up with a rough estimate of the COP. And I guess I am also confused by these numbers here. What the 800,000 actually represents is that if I were a installer, could I go out and buy 800,000 different models, or could I go out and choose from 800,000 available units that are in warehouses, or exactly what does that 800,000 represent?
Thank you for that question. So that represents the total number of matched heat pump systems that have an AHRI number. And so like on the retail side, we install lots of, projects where it won't even have an HRI number because they have an existing, indoor American standard, and we put on a Bryant heat pump, but it doesn't, pertain to anything because it doesn't matter. So I just looked with that 11.0 HSPF, and then I put in 284 ANV for the outdoor unit model number. And so if we do that, of those 5,200, 863 of those 5,200 are for the Bryant ANV heat pump that qualifies for 11.0 HSPF. And so that heat pump, there's 4 different heat pumps there. There's a 2 ton, a 3 ton, a 4 ton, and 5 ton. And with those 4 heat pumps, you can match it 863 different ways with a air handler, or a furnace, or those are the 2 main ones that still hit the 11.0 HSPF or higher, if that makes sense.
Okay, Damon, go ahead.
Yeah, a few things. So just to reiterate what Craig just said, the RE database gives you all of the 800,000 combinations that are rated that actually give you an HSPF that's proven. And so if you do put 11 as your benchmark, the 5,200 out of 790,480 or 640 rather comes out to 0.65%. So only 65% of the combinations available that are rated will meet 11. As far as the COP on 11, you take the HSPF number divided by 3.412. So that would say that an 11 HSPF is 322% efficient as compared to electric resistance, whereas the 8.2 is 240% efficient as compared to electric resistance. So still significantly more energy efficient. I can say that over the last 18 months, last year, our company built about 350 homes. We are very heat pump centric because we're high performance builders. And on average, it's taking us 6 to 8 months to get matched systems. Home I completed in Suncadia back in October. After 8 months, I still could not get matched outdoor units to my indoor units. Fortunately, it was under the old code and I wasn't using it for energy credit. So we had to mismatch the system. We had American Standard inside and we had Goodman on the outside. The project I just finished here in Olympia, we got through drywall, which is usually where we activate the heating system for our finishes. I could not get an outdoor unit for 3 months. My suppliers showed them on the manifest. They were somewhere on a ship in Puget Sound. It took 3 months to get them off the dock and out the door. So this is a real thing. We can't match systems. And if we limit them, it just makes it a little more difficult. So I would speak in favor of this request.
Thank you, Damon. Jill?
Thanks. Yeah. Been considering this for the last couple of days when I found out about it. I just wanted to add that we have an options table, our 406 table, which has many, many, many options for designers and builders to choose from. And the letter that was sent, so there's only one option that is for an 11 HSPF unit, and there are 6 different HVAC options under that, but there's also improved envelope options, air infiltration options, HVAC distribution options, water heating options, renewable energy options, and appliance package options that are available to home builders. So in no way is 11 HS required. It's one of many options. And I guess also just from the tag, energy code tag perspective, what we did was, in order to meet our legislative mandate for energy reduction, every 600 kWh of annual energy savings was equal to a half credit. So if we're allowing a lower efficiency unit to meet to get that extra credit, what we would have done had this gone in front of the tag was find ways to get that extra 600 kWh of savings within using that lower efficiency unit. So I guess, and so Carolyn Logue reached out to me yesterday, and I sent her these questions. So I guess I'm hoping for a response on, and if we don't get the energy savings through the efficient HVAC, I mean, there's other options for builders to choose from, but if we don't get that 600 kWh through the 11 HSPF, how are Craig and Carolyn, how are you planning to make up that 600 kWh such that all the home builders are on equal footing with regards to the energy savings within the code, and there might be ways to do that. So that's why I emailed the question yesterday, so that we'd have a good answer today on that.
Craig and Carolyn, feel free to speak to that.
Yeah, I can, speak to it, and it's a great point. From our builders out there, when they are designing the home to meet the 2018 energy code, they have, they make their decisions on how they're going to do it with a heat pump water heater, 11.0 HSPF HVAC system, the prescriptive air sealing, so on and so forth. And so these are plans that have been, submitted, approved, and that kind of stuff. And I think the onus would be on the builder with the home either already under construction or ready to be on the market without missing the heat pump or what have you, to completely change, their plans to add solar or, something else. I'm not sure if our builder partner, could speak to it, or Carolyn, if there's anything you want to add to that.
Well, I did hear from a couple of people out on the HVAC side, and I don't know, I was hoping some of the manufacturers would be on here today too. But I think that was one of the reasons for asking for the 11.0 to sort of be temporarily taken off the table, was to kind of say, because I think there's a tendency to say, oh, we'll just go for this to meet the energy credits needed, and instead kind of force that kind of design idea, because there are ways to do it. But it has to be done sort of at the design side and when they're putting this, designing how the system's going to work. And so that's why the 1-year delay is because when they come in and say, well, this is what we want, and then it can't be achieved, that's where we're running into the difficulties.
Okay, thank you. Carolyn?
Thanks. Yeah, so I guess just to kind of follow up on some of Chel's points and also, what was just mentioned, it seems like we've all been hearing about supply chain issues now for some time. So it's not, a new issue, and we considered, this request or similar requests last fall as well. So I guess it kind of leads to just a question around, it would seem home builders would then shift their strategy. In reviewing the BIAW and WSU energy program training, one of the things emphasized there is that there is a wide range of potential paths for R406. So those, examples show pathways to compliance with high efficiency gas furnaces, ductless heat pumps, and then the ducted heat pumps we're talking about now, and then at various levels of efficiency. So I guess there's just a lot of built-in flexibility there, with different ways to earn points, that it provides a lot of options that make, short duration changes to rules around specific technologies potentially unnecessary. And I guess too, we all know the highest efficiency inverter driven heat pumps are the ones that really perform the best in cold climates, maintaining capacity, reducing utility costs, and driving down grid resources. So it seems important to keep these heat pumps just as that option, for earning more points, also to ensure that market signal is continuing to be sent so that we really don't hamstring our future needs for high performance heat pumps.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Can I address that just really quickly?
Yes, go ahead.
That's part of the problem. And we get that we need to be able to put this into, that we're going for the highest performance possible. But the problem is with this sitting out there, and it's going to still be in the code. It would still be out there for the future. But for right now, because of these supply chain issues, it is difficult to do. And what we're ending up with the temporary solution that was come up with is that if the builder and the architect and everybody are saying, well, yeah, we're going to put the 11.0 in there, now you can't get the system. And so then you're just having the furnace in there and you haven't necessarily achieved your energy efficiency goals. And what we're saying is take that off for a year. We can still get to the energy efficiency goals we need to. We can, people can work with the builders to do that. But with this on the table, I think there's a tendency to try to go to the most efficient right away. And it's causing problems. And that's why we're asking for this temporary, kind of deal with this. That's the problem with, there are these other options. And we know that the training is out there, but I think there's a tendency to try to go for those max credits.
Thank you. Micah, go ahead.
I couldn't take fast enough notes to answer all my questions, but going back to the numbers, it sounds like you have combination of system types, but I haven't heard really much input on, hey, we have these different systems types, but we can't get this specific one or whatnot. Damon, you indicated that you can get these systems. However, it could be a 3 to 8 month lead time before you're able to get them. So it doesn't sound like you're not able to get them. It just sounds like the lead time is extremely long and it's a difficult process. Then the other part of this, Carolyn Lowe, you mentioned that this would be a temporary item. However, with the date that's requested, we'll be 6 months into the 2021 Washington State Energy Code. So pretty much you're asking us just to waive the currently adopted 2018 standards for the rest of the code cycle. And then my concern is, where is that going to leave us leading into the 2021 energy code standards and what has to be met with that? So I do have some concerns with this, and I do want to, the other two experts, Carolyn and Chale, that talked about this. I agree that even if we wanted to look at considering this, that there are options to make up these credits, not just saying we get the full credits for something less, really what it is. It's something less. So I think I may have had more statements than questions there, but it does sound to me, and you can clarify if I'm wrong, you can get the units, but I haven't heard anything on where the units are. It sounded like there's limited options on units, but it does sound like they can be obtained.
Thank you, Micah.
Craig, you want to take that one on?
Yeah, and what I would say is that we're not seeing large numbers of these units really available, in the market. And I'm kind of reading through the code. There isn't, in terms of a heat pump, we're talking air source only. And so again, these plans are for ducted systems, and the only heat pump credit for air source other than geothermal is meeting that 11.0 HSPF. So if we don't get that, then the builders are short 1.5 credits on their stuff. And so we've been dealing with these supply chain problems for about 2 years now, and it's it hasn't gotten better. And what our manufacturing partners are telling us with China relocking itself down, the continuing chip shortage, the geopolitical conflicts that we're unfortunately dealing with, we kind of have had a short period of relief, I would say, over the last few months, and we have seen some of this equipment come in, but our manufacturers are telling us after this, expect another 6 or 8 month delay, if we start getting the stuff. And so we're raising our hand saying we don't see the stuff coming in the near term. And so what we fear is that we're going to have a bunch of housing stock that is ready to have people move in, with the exception of not having a heat pump that qualifies for 11.0 HSPF, and it just is going to sit there, indefinitely, until the units come in. Will they come in at some point? I think they absolutely will. But I think we could be talking, years away potentially.
And Micah, I know that you've had these concerns about the supply chain as well. And one of the things in looking it does take it to the end of the code year, but it's definitely something I think that also probably needs to be discussed in the current energy code discussion, is what happens if you have the system or the way you meet this and there's not the supply, because that is something, when we deal with appliance efficiency bills at the legislature, it has been built in that Department of Commerce, before they can put something into place, often needs to look at what's the supply issue. Same thing happens over at Department of Ecology when they're looking at alternatives for like plastics and things like that. There are requirements that they have to look at what's the supply situation. And it probably is something that does need to be addressed in the next codes, is what do you do if these systems aren't available? And I think you do provide the options. But the problem is the options need to be done in the design side, and then if the supply issue doesn't, is a problem, when the house is sitting there ready to be occupied, that's where you run into problems. So it's something that's going to have to be considered as we move forward on some of this.
Okay. Damon, go ahead.
Thank you. Micah, to answer your question, lead time versus acquire, it is both, but in more than half our cases, we could not acquire. If we're matching systems that are not in that RE database, so I'm putting one manufacturer's outdoor unit and somebody else's indoor unit, there's no data to say that it's been tested and meets any, we use our best guess. This unit looks like it should perform this way, but it's not rated. And that's what the reality is that we're not being able to get them. And as Carolyn mentioned, we're a design build contractor. So from the time we start designing that house, going through permitting and get to the stage where we're doing our mechanical rough-ins is often over a year. So we've already headed off down a path and now can't switch gears to replace the points got from our HVAC system. And I think the most important thing is, Lexar Homes has always been a high performance builder. We've always built above code, but in the last code cycle, we struggled to get 6 points, and we're doing it through triple pane windows, tight envelopes, highest tier 3 water heaters, and 100% through our HVAC. The fuel normalization credits only apply to HVAC, and that one extra point you get from a heat pump is critical. So this presents quite a challenge. I don't see how we, as a high performance builder, would be able to switch gears and make it up somewhere else in the code without our HVAC credits.
Thank you, Damon. Chair, go ahead.
Yeah, it's really sympathetic to the supply chain issues. We've had them on many of our projects. We had a large general contractor hand mixing concrete because of a strike earlier, and then I've heard about other temporary solutions that get buildings open and other things, and so very sympathetic to that. Craig Olson, you said builders are 1.5 credits short, and my understanding from the letter was that it was only half a credit short. Can you confirm that?
Sorry, I muted myself. But so the 11.0 HSPF gives you 1.5 credit. You could go with just if it is gas or electric with an air source heat pump with a minimum 9.5. That does give you 1 credit there. So if we, but
that's
you
what I was
can't
referring to is you would get 1 credit with a 9.5, and you're so if you switch from 11 to a 9.5, you lose a half a credit, right?
Correct.
Okay, so you only have to make a half credit elsewhere in the table.
Correct. And again, I think it just kind of goes to where does that credit get made up? Because, like with the window package, that has, been part of the plan, and often, those windows are ordered and there's a commitment between the manufacturer and the builder on that. And so potentially, as a, just kind of looking at this and spitballing ideas here, if, that it would certainly be, highly beneficial that if we could temporarily have that air source centrally ducted heat pump minimum 9.5 HSPF be 1.5 credits, for a year or longer, that would, free up a lot of combinations and matches, and we could get more work done that way. So yeah, so it is a half credit, but the builders, as the commenter said earlier, work really hard to figure out a way to get all 6 of those credits. And when you're a half credit short, there isn't an easy spot, other than solar, but I think the solar supply chain is worse than heat pumps. I'm not an expert on that, so I'm not positive, but I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so we're a half credit short, and or some builders are a half credit short based on supply chain issues. And I guess I think I understand the problem. The remedy, I'm not supportive of the remedy proposed. I think pretending that you save energy when you don't is just not aligning with the code that the council passed. But other remedies I think might be available, and I guess I heard from Damon that right now what's not allowed is mixing and matching components that probably get you to an 11, but are not tested to an 11. I'm wondering if there's a remedy down that path where if you can get components and they all are part of 11.0 systems, if that would, because that would hit the mark probably, or at least have on average, probably hitting the mark as far as energy efficiency. I'm wondering if there's a remedy in that direction.
I think that would absolutely help. I mean, if the council amended something to where if the heat pump does qualify for a minimum of 11.0 HSPF, if it's rated at that level and we're allowed to mix and match, even though we don't have an HRI number, that would 100% help.
Thank you, Craig. Micah, go ahead.
Were you done, Chael? I don't want to, okay.
Yeah, I think I'm heartened by that comment. Thanks, Craig.
Yeah, and no disillusion our industry. I mean, we are in line with, installing efficient equipment and, believe in this stuff and are happy to do it. It's not that we don't think that these things work or anything like that. It's simply that, that we are so constrained by having it be a match system. Like, again, if I just go to 9.5 HSPF on HRI, there's 106,693 matches there. And then if you can, do some mixing and matching with different brands, that's kind of what that would look like. When one brand gets a shipment of heat pumps that have ratings of 11.5 or higher, and you could mix it with a different brand's air handler, I would see that opening up some avenues.
I guess just thanks, Greg. That's really good information. Are there inherent compatibility issues between brands? I mean, if we allow this and someone goes out and get a couple different brands, is it going to lead to loss of catastrophic failures or something?
It could. It definitely could affect, the features. A lot of the inverter systems communicate bidirectionally, and so instead of from the thermostat to the unit, they communicate back. So you lose that a bit, but it's still, it's still an inverter compressor, running, and it's, the most efficient inverter compressor. So you would lose maybe, a little bit of functionality, but I wouldn't see us losing much in terms of the efficiency. I mean, because, the compressor is really what it gets you the efficiency. That's the electricity cost you're paying to move the refrigerant, between the indoor and the outdoor coil.
Okay, thanks.
Micah, go ahead.
Thanks, Tony. Damon, thanks for that information on the lead time and actually acquire or not. I think we've spent a lot of time on the numbers, and to get to that point, you indicated the acquire is completely different from this options available, where the letter proposed this as almost the option to acquire provided limited options, but that didn't, or the options available was limited, but it didn't really say, hey, we're having issues actually acquiring the options that are out there. And it really didn't sell it that way. So I think we spent a lot of time trying to get to that. How long is it taking to acquire these, if at all? And then your request is, at least this, not your request, Damon, but this request is wanting, really, we started this last fall for these supply chain issues, and now we're here again, and they're asking for a request to go through another, year and a half. So I do have some concerns there, because we're saying that we can get these systems, obviously, to some extent, but what is that extent, and what does this need to look like? I guess is what I'm looking at is, I think I'd be on the same page as Chael, as we would be open to some other options. However, as written, the request, I would not be able to support it, just because it doesn't seem to really make the case on the acquisition part of it. It just seems to go, hey, we've got these options and they're limited. But what we're hearing, and what I hear, is you've got hundreds of available system types, but that doesn't mean you can acquire them. And that's not what it really indicated in the letters. And so I am sympathetic. I think we can find a better option, at least to go about this. I think Chael makes a great point of maybe looking at mixing and matching, or again, the way this letter has been sold is, I didn't know, like I said, I'm not savvy on the energy side of it. Thankfully, Chael is here to go, hey, there's a 9.0 option. And the only thing in the letter is the lowest option, which maybe it's not the lowest, 8.2, or the 11 option. I mean, if the letter had said, hey, there's a 9.0 option that maybe has more availability, and can we find a flexible way to gain that additional half credit? I think that would be maybe another option that could be on the table. So as written, though, I don't think I can support this. I would like to see some alternative options discussed. Thanks.
Thank you, Micah. Todd, go ahead.
Thank you, Tony. So thank you for this. Yes, absolutely sympathetic to the question here. And I know this world well. We supply, home builders, obviously. As a manufacturing supplier representative, though, I want to put a couple other perspectives in and kind of caution all of us from using the code to address supply chain constraints. You know, this is almost our new normal now, so we have to think of other ways to address this. In this role, it weighs heavily on me with existing manufacturers. Of course, I think that themselves are supply chain constrained, but it also, in this role, you know, we talk a lot about the state mandates, you know, that this body with rulemaking authority granted by the legislature, you know, has to address. There are other legislative mandates on the manufacturing side to double our manufacturing capability, number of jobs by 2031 on that same time frame. And so this is very important that Commerce, you know, can lead on this. And where I'm going with this is, yes, there are long lead times, you know, at a project level, you know, on the matter of, you know, a couple, you know, 3, 4, sometimes, you know, 12 months. But when we're talking about building capacity for manufacturing to actually address these problems, we're talking about, you know, 18, 24, 36-month, you know, capital layouts to build these facilities, manufacturing facilities. And so we really need stability in things like the energy code so that people can make those types of investments. So it concerns me a lot that we would do a temporary, you know, fix in the code while our state, public and private, you know, investors are trying to address this problem. So thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Damon, go ahead.
I got to put on my building science hat for a moment. And while I know the reality on the planet is plan reviewers are just looking for the words that say this is a 11.0 or better HSPF on your plan sets. I don't think inspectors are taking down the serial numbers of the indoor and outdoor units and running them through the RE database. As a HERS rater, I'm bound to do that. I have to do that. So while we can mix and match and go, this looks like a good fit, we don't know what the performance of the unit is. I like it as a solution. I think in the real world, you're probably going to get 90-95% of the target that you aim for. But I just, you know, what the code says is what the code says. It's interesting to me because, again, we're using a lot of these 11s and these 9.5 or better units that, you know, 0.65% on the 11s. And when Craig gave us the number on the 9.5s, that's only 13% of all of the unit combinations that are available. So you put those together, and that means the rest of the country is using the other 84% of the units that are out there. So we've really limited ourselves down. And once again, I just want to repeat, it's without going really hybrid, you cannot meet the energy code without your HVAC system being part of the equation. So I'll leave that. Thank you.
Thank you, Damon. Roger?
Yeah, I just want to comment that you know, designing buildings, we talk about lead time and supply chain of systems all the time early on. And that's on a design that takes 2 years to design and a year to permit. And the supply chain issues that we really have come up in the last 18 months. And I question whether the building code, which normally happens every 3 years, is the right way to address them. Having said that, well, two points. I would not support something that went through 12/31 if there was something that was an emergency rule that was going to go through July 31, which is when the 2021 code will take effect. I could maybe get behind it, maybe. But I would have a tendency to look to another, you know, I'm not smart enough to go through all the details, but a different type of a proposal that would somehow allow temporarily those houses that are currently permitted under the 2018, a short-term solution. But knowing that if you're going to have a house in the 2021 code that has to go through permit, that you're going to have to meet that. And if there are supply chain challenges, then you would look elsewhere to do that. So if there's a temporary solution to give a little bit of relief through July of 23, I could maybe support it. But beyond that, I'm not sure that I really would support what's in front of us. So.
Okay. Thank you, Roger. This is open for public comment. There are about 5 or 6 hands up. I'd like to open it up to public comment before jumping back to any council action. That being said, for time's sake, we are going to limit public comment to 1 minute per person. And we'll start with Kim Barker.
Tony, before they go out, I want to note that there are a couple of items in the chat as well.
Yes.
We can get back to those, but I don't want to skip those. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Micah. Mismatching equipment is a bad idea. 11 HSPF units communicate with the indoor unit. It will not work correctly in most cases. In cold climates, we run into issues with defrost and poor performance due to coil volume issues. That's from anonymous attendee. There's no name on that one. Amy says, I thought emergency rules were limited to 120 days unless there is a public hearing. Stoyan, do you want to speak to that quickly?
Yes, the emergency rules are effective for 120 days until 120 days. The council cannot readopt emergency rules if they are not proposed for permanent adoption. So if we adopt emergency rule 120 days, we have a few that are part of the rulemaking process. So this can be readopted for another 120 days. But again, if we don't start a permanent adoption of this rule, then it expires in 120 days.
Understood. Thank you, Stoyan. Okay, go ahead, Kim, and your time starts now.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate what Shell and Caroline said about this being a menu of options. Remember that this one is not a mandatory requirement out of the energy code. It is the choice to get you 1.5 credits out of option, the section 406. So by reducing this down to 8.2, it would be like just reducing the total number of credits by 1.5, which is actually all that's required for a small addition. So it's pretty substantial. Also, the number of matching systems doesn't actually tell us the number of units available. I never quite heard that. So I would want to know, if there's so many models that are qualifying, that doesn't tell us how many actual units are out there. Also, I wanted to say on the design side of things, like we are aware of the supply chain issues now, so perhaps we could consider, if this does go into effect, that it only applies to applications that have already been applied for and already selected that option as a choice. So only those that are actually having problems with this specific issue. And then just the timing of things to make this only effective for the 2018 code, so that we don't go past that 2021 adoption. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Sophia Steele, let me see here. Okay, go ahead.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Sophia Steele here on behalf of the Associated Builders and Contractors of Western Washington. I just wanted to reiterate Carolyn's concerns and the concerns that are outlined in this letter. We support her options as she proposes in her letter, and also have concerns with the supply chain issues and the timing of this rule, and would support the temporary amendment.
Thank you, Sophia.
Thank you.
And Andrea Smith.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, Andrea Smith here on behalf of the Building Industry Association of Washington. I would also like to echo what Sophia just said. We are in full support of this amendment or emergency rule. And I would also like to point out that this kind of illustrates a fundamental problem with the prescriptive options table that we have and that builders are required to comply with. And so maybe there's an opportunity to reassess if there's a way to make that a little bit more flexible or user-friendly, or I don't know what the answer is. I'm not going to pretend like I know what the answer is, but I think that's a discussion that needs to happen on the tag level. And I think that's why we're seeing a few jurisdictions in the state opting not to even enforce the most recent iteration of the energy code and those option tables. So I would just leave you with that, there are some jurisdictions that are not even enforcing the code. So, yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. David, there is no last name. Let me see here. Go ahead.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yep, go ahead.
My name's David Balon. I apologize for the brief ID. I'm on the tag and have been for a decade or two or three. The point of this particular measure in the option table was that you get an extra few hundred kilowatt hours out of this higher performance equipment. It is true that this section was written probably 4 or 5, actually more than 4 years ago. In the interim, there's been a lot of work done on how heat pumps work and how to get high performance out of heat pumps. And that the principal amount of that work is the variable speed components that are being introduced right now, mostly from East Asia, but through American partnerships. At this point, I would say that if you're going to have an emergency rule on this, the best thing to do, especially given that some of this data isn't really quite available yet, is to take what we now have, 3.3, I guess it is, the 9.0 option or 9.5 option, and turn it and rewrite, and not rewrite it, but write a new 3.5 to say you can do the 9.5, but you have to have variable speed compressors and air handlers. It isn't really a matching problem, but it is a problem of controls. And so you really do need to have the match, not because variable speed compressors and variable speed heat pumps aren't potentially compatible, but because the controls aren't potentially compatible.
Thank you, David.
Incidentally, there is a proposal at the tag that hasn't been reviewed yet that I'm interested in, and this gives us a chance to look at that with more seriousness.
Thank you, David. Dan, if I mess this up, I apologize. Is it Biha?
Yeah, I guess I would add that, from industry, it is a challenge right now across the industry to get components, to get parts. We saw homeowners in Eastern Washington with $600 to $1,000 heating bills because they can't set the unit on the outdoor. And so their heating bills, as we go into next year, if we're looking at these units not arriving for 6 to 8 more months, which is reality, you're going to have a lot of homeowners. And it didn't affect us so bad last year because we just started to see these homes and these, homes with the code implemented. But you're going to have, as we go into this next winter, and as you go through a summer, you're going to have a lot of your constituents that are very upset.
Thank you. Larry Andrews, go ahead.
You can't mix and match like you just talked about because you'll lose your warranty, and there's no way that you're going to be able to charge it properly. Okay. And there ain't a manufacturer out there is going to warranty something that's mixed and matched to begin with. But you come off with a path, and when you get to the outdoor unit, the house is pretty much already done, and you're sitting out there and you can't get the unit because of something that China did. And that's not right. I mean, somebody needs to make a gap here, a bridge gap. Maybe you give them the 1.5 points for a 9 HSPF or something. But you can't blame the builder for trying to do the right thing And then he gets to the point that because of something that's happened in China, that we can't get the piece of equipment to do it. And that's what's happening here. And that's not right. And I've got some other questions that need to be addressed. And from what I looked at this table, we got some real problems with what's happening coming down the line. And we need to address them. And I need the time to talk to you about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Amy, go ahead.
Great, thanks, Chair Doan and members of the State Building Code Council. My name is Amy Wheelis, and I'm with the Northwest Energy Coalition. I saw this item come through on the agenda on Monday, so I did a little outreach to some manufacturers and to NIA on the supply chain issues, just so I could get a better understanding. And I definitely agree and don't dispute that there are likely some supply chain issues affecting these products, as well as just the general supply chain for construction. However, as mentioned, I don't think this proposed remedy is appropriate, but I think there's probably a middle ground that I look forward to the council discussing here. And I agree, it should be evaluated regularly. If there's a need for a permanent rule, we'll probably need more time, maybe a tag discussion to just walk through that with more time. One item I just don't think has been mentioned here, if the council does take some action that results in some drop in efficiency, I really recommend communicating that out to the electric utilities in the state so they can modify their new construction and efficiency programs. They may be able to provide some additional utility incentives that could help bring these higher efficiency units, getting them into new construction, or facilitate some bulk purchase options. So just something to keep in mind as you move forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Amy. And Craig, is your hand still up from before, or you wanted to say more?
No, it wasn't up from before,
Okay.
but thank you.
Okay, thank you, Craig. Okay. At this time, we're going to jump to council, we're back to council discussion and action. So we'll open it back up to council members. Go ahead, Micah.
I want to thank all the members of the public for speaking on behalf of this proposal. I know it's important. We know the supply chain issues are there. I think there's a better path forward than this one. I don't know what that is. I'm not the expert. I know that there were some suggestions. I think Todd made a good mention that we're trying to address something that possibly another entity in the state should address as a supply chain issue through a code requirement. I think the code requirement's there. If it's too onerous, then I think there's another, based on the supply chain, then maybe there's another path than this. So I would recommend that maybe the proponent of this emergency rule come back with some additional alternatives to kind of address the comments and questions from the council and even other members of the public, and see if there's a better path forward, because I just don't see this as being the best way to go, especially just waiving a requirement for the duration of the code cycle is how I read this. And I that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Micah. Cheryl, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of what Micah said, so I won't repeat that, but I generally agree. I guess the other question is, let's say we even did an emergency rule right now. Does that affect all the permits that people have already applied for where the home is almost done, or does it not? Because I think that's what we're talking about, is people who got the permit 6 months ago. The house is almost completely done, and their unit is sitting on a ship somewhere, and they can't get it. So I guess Tony or Soyan or somebody, do you know the answer to that? Is this retroactive then to all the prior permits under this code if we did an emergency rule?
It's my understanding, and Stoyan or Dirk can correct me if I'm wrong, but if the application was in place at the time that the code was active, then it would not affect those. They would still get that credit would still be available to them. That's my understanding of it.
It's not really related to when the rule becomes effective. It's enforcement, I think. And I'll ask Micah if he can jump in here, because if the rule becomes effective tomorrow, and then it changes the requirement. So when the application is already submitted, then it should be based on the code effective at the time of submittal.
Time of application, that's correct.
Time of the application, yes.
So in other words, even if we did an emergency rule today, it wouldn't affect all the home builders that can't get the mechanical unit because they applied for the permit 6 months ago.
Correct, unless they reapplied with a different option.
Okay.
Okay. Does anyone have a motion that they would like to make on this?
Chael has his hand up.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we do not move forward with a remedy at this time, but strongly suggest that the entities that propose this or other entities come back, as Micah was saying, with remedies that are perhaps the purview of this council or perhaps purview of other organizations that more directly address supply chain issues and have perhaps even a couple of options if there are a couple of options to provide the remedy. We all understand the problem, but I think we're not in agreement on the solution. So that's the motion, is that we empathize with the proponent, but also the solution proposed is not the right solution right now.
Okay, so just to sum that up, Joe, if the motion is to not adopt the emergency rule.
Correct.
Do we have a second?
I will second that based on the recommendation to come back and provide additional options. I don't want to shut this down completely, but I don't want to write an emergency rule on the fly.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any against? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to agenda item number 9, our TAG process reports for Group 2 codes.
Sorry, I was muted. So for the technical advisory group reports, we don't have much to add. I will let the technical advisory group chairs if they want to add something, but we're moving not with the speed I would like, but we're moving. The goal is to complete everything by, let's see, June 10th. And then we'll prepare the recommendations for the BFP and MVE standing committees, and then the council meeting is scheduled for June 17th. So it's a very aggressive task and optimistic, I would say. And if we cannot succeed with that, again, we need to schedule a special meeting, most likely end of June or first week of July.
Okay. Do we want to start with anyone specific? Do the chairs want to speak on these?
If the chairs want to add something, I just wanted to provide a little bit of information, but if the chairs wants to provide something specific, feel free.
Go ahead, Micah.
I'll add something just because of how important the IRC tag is and the IRC development. We didn't have that many proposals, and we got through several in our last meeting. However, we do have a meeting Monday and then one again, I believe, on June 6th for folks that want to attend. And we will be discussing some of the bigger proposals that could have a little more broad impact on the residential code. One of those will be about lofts. We did pass that as a sleeping loft last year, but we're looking at replacing that with something a little more well-rounded and balanced.
And then also we're looking at adding a new chapter to the residential code that will cover existing buildings. There's been a big push to kind of get the residential code as its own standalone code for a long time, and that would include existing buildings. There's been a lot of enforcement issues where folks will be sending an applicant to the existing building code, which really doesn't relate to the residential code. So upcoming discussions will be very important. So if anybody wants to attend those meetings and provide input on those impacts, I'd greatly appreciate it. But that's where we are on the residential tag. Thanks.
And Micah didn't mention his favorite topic. There are 2 proposals for electric vehicle charging infrastructure that are scheduled for the next meeting.
I was trying not to share my bias on those stories.
Nice. Okay, Todd, go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm the chair of the building code tag, and we a week ago went through all of the building code proposals. We tabled 3 so that we could make sure we got the proponents back and then really do some deliberate stakeholder engagement, especially on 2 that are related to EPDs. For the steel and concrete chapters. I should say on the IBC, we're in group 2, so those are all the structural chapters of the IBC. And then also in this tag, we will get to the existing building code next, but we're going to start this week with those 3 tabled IBC.
Excellent.
Thank you. That's on Wednesday. Thank you.
Caroline?
Thanks. Yeah, so on the mechanical tag, quick update, we received a total of 17 proposals for the mechanical code, the fuel gas code, and the mechanical sections of the residential code. One of those is just a minor editorial, so it's really 16 items. And over the past 2 tag meetings, we managed to discuss all of them, and we have moved forward either as submitted or as modified, I think about 7 of them. So we have 9 remaining proposals that have been essentially returned to proponents to, do some further research or address various questions or comments from the tag and from members of the public. We have 2 more meetings scheduled, one for next Thursday and for the following Thursday, to deal with those remaining 9 items. And in terms of content, the majority of the proposals are really clarifications or improvements to existing language. There are a couple items that do seek to change requirements, and those mostly relate to indoor air quality issues. So there's a proposal seeking to require outdoor air equipment to be able to accommodate filters with higher levels of filtration for wildfire smoke events. And there's also a proposal to require increased ventilation for kitchen hood ranges based on fuel type. So just a heads up there on some of the topics we're dealing with, making good progress. And very, very appreciative of those tag members, as well as all the folks not on the tag who have been showing up and making substantial contributions. So thank you to those folks.
Thank you, Carol. Damon, go
ahead. Just a quick question for Micah, since I now sit on the IRC tag. Is the significant changes book that the IECC puts out available to us as tag members?
I will answer instead of Micah. The significant changes book is available because of copyrights. We cannot send you the entire book, but we can send you chapters by your request.
Okay, that's all I needed. Thanks.
Just send me an email or a net, and we will send you the chapter you need.
And Damon, just to clarify, you're looking, that was the IECC?
No, from the ICC.
Okay, thank you. Just for I like some reason I heard energy code residential stuff, but okay, we're good.
I eat, sleep, and breathe it. So,
Chell, go ahead.
Yeah, the Washington State Energy Code residential tags have been meeting a couple times. We have fewer proposals this time than we normally have, but we have more substantive proposals, and I would say, from my perspective, for the first time, we have multiple paths to actually get to our energy legislative targets. In the past, usually there's only roughly one set of code proposals that will get us there. This time we have a couple. So I think that's very interesting. We are going to cover R406 the options table at the next energy code tag, which is a week from today. So all of you who are extremely interested in R406, please show up. We're also considering space heating options, as well as including HERS raters, part of code paths, and many other exciting things. So show up. We have lots of tag members and lots of members of the public, and I want to thank them all because they're all making an awesome code and yeah, spending hundreds of hours and that on in putting these things together and then putting their best thoughts towards that.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. Any other comments from council or staff on agenda item number 9? Go ahead, Micah.
Sorry, it's not a tag question, but I was going to let Damon know if you want to email me, I can maybe assist with some of the documentation you may need as well.
Thank you.
Seattle, City of Seattle, they have more money, so he may be able to.
Best budget in the room. All right. Let's move on to other business. Item 10. Does anyone have anything under other business?
Stoyan, did you want to talk about the bylaw question and calling an election on the vice chair?
Okay, we can do that.
Yeah, so there was a question earlier. Hi, everyone. There was a question earlier regarding the rule for the timing of the adoption of that bylaw amendment that the council approved earlier. I did do some research. Robert's rules, which controls in areas which aren't otherwise addressed in our bylaws, is adamantly clear that changes to the bylaws are immediate upon adoption. So congratulations, Tony, you are now the chair. And that means that the vice chair position has been vacated. So under the new bylaw, there are two, so there's a little bit of a wrinkle, right? Because it became vacant during a meeting. So the question would be, how many more meetings do we need to wait before we call the election to fill the now empty vacant vice chair position? I think the best reading is probably 2 more. So certainly June would be an opportunity, and then whenever the next regularly scheduled meeting is after that. But I would note that there's probably not any need to push it off that far.
Derek, appreciate it. Okay, we do have public comment, some items that want to be brought up. So Ken Brulette, go ahead. Can't hear you yet, Ken, but it looks like your mic is on. Still can't hear you. Okay, I'm going to jump to Larry Andrews, and then Ken, we'll come back to you, and hopefully by then you have your audio figured out. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, I got a real problem after doing all this review on this last code thing that got turned down. Table C 403.3.2 bracket 2. And if you go down to the bottom of that table, you're seeing that greater than 65,000 BTUs, you got a co-op of 3.3 at 47 degrees, and then a co-op of 2.25 at 17 degrees. Then you go down to greater than 135,000, you have a co-op of 3.2 with a temperature of 47 degrees, and then 17, a co-op of 2.05. I've just reviewed the Lennox and the Rheem commercial equipment. There's no way you can get there. It's not possible, okay? And in fact, on the residential side, with their highest SEER heat pump on the residential size, 5 ton and under, I can't get to the 3.3, okay? And so these numbers, they're supposed to be a minimum efficient standard. This is so far out of the ballpark. Maybe somebody makes something, but I'd hate to see what the price would be, even if they do make it. So we need to readdress these co-op numbers and do some real research on that, because I don't think they're achievable right now. And that's my addressing to the code council. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry.
Hey,
Chair, go ahead.
Larry, could you send me an email or send staff an email with whatever you're suggesting, and also which code you're talking about, which version of the code you're talking about. Obviously, we don't want to do anything that's infeasible. The code is the 2021 code has been through lots and lots of review already. 2018 code is in force. So I don't know which one you're talking about. So if you want to send an email with
yeah, I sure will, Shell. But if you look down the paper, I mean, we went with EER and SEER, and then at the very bottom we dropped to co-op. So I don't know if we got a misprint here or something, but I don't think we can get to those numbers. Thanks.
Thank you, Larry. And Ken, let's see here. Okay, try that. You're still showing muted right now. Oh, there you go. Now it's on. Still nothing, Ken.
Can you access the chat, Ken?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Sorry. Go ahead. Try that.
Okay.
Sorry. Do it again, Ken.
Okay. How about now?
Good. Good to go.
Okay. Thank you.
Progress.
Okay. This is Ken Brulette, City of Seattle Fire Department. I need to talk about current 2008 Washington State Fire Code Amendment 904.1.1 through 904.1.1.3. During our code tag process, there were some editorial items that were brought up, and we've been waiting for the state to do the editorial changes, and that has not occurred yet. And we need that to happen either by some form of a note that could be on the website, but there's some confusion over some terminology in 904.112 and 904.113 regarding kitchen suppression systems. That language was added in there by mistake during the code adoption process. It does not need to be there, and we need it stricken because there is no certification for those two items in there. I do have a document that was presented during the tag that showed the cleanup, but we went ahead with the 2021 code change, which went further than that, with the understanding that it will get cleaned up in one of our CR documents, which has not occurred yet. And so I was hoping that staff could direct me if they want me to fill something out for the next council meeting, or if they can just speed this process up, because we're having some issues with the ICC NAFED certification in 904.11.
Thank you, Ken. Let me just add to this real quick to make sure we're on the same page. Ken, is this the certification through ICC NAFED that doesn't apply / exist with the way it's worded?
Exactly. How we word it right now is that there is an ICC engineered fire suppression system that which there is not. There's only a NAFED. And then we also mentioned that it's a kitchen suppression system, which it is not. And so there's something that needs to be struck in two different locations.
Okay. That being said, Ken and Stoyan, I'm just kind of coming off the top here. Can we do an expedited rulemaking that is a clerical, since it's not a significant change, just like we kind of talked about with a couple of things a week or two ago?
Well, I don't know yet. I need to see it. And
assuming that that's the case, I'm thinking that would be the best route.
if it's editorial, we can do expedite rulemaking, although
That's what it would be. It's just not an accurate version of the code. I know which one Ken's talking about, because it did come up in the tag. Ken, can you throw it in an email and send it to Stoyan and members of council, just take a quick look at, and then we'll go from there.
Yes, I will.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Ken. Anything further?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Okay, is there anything else from council for other business? Okay, with that, we'll go to the, hold on, we have a
chat.
Yeah, question for the assistant ag. Derek, that's a question geared towards you. It's for determining least cost option or least burdensome option for code proposals, does a life cycle cost analysis alone meet that requirement, or does a measure have to meet both LCCA and social life cycle costs? If it meets one but not the other, which is predominant? That's Kevin Duell with Northwest Natural.
Yeah, so I'm not in a position right now where I could offer any opinions on that specific issue, but I'd request that question be copied down, and then I'll work with Stoyan on figuring out how best to respond.
Okay, thank you.
I think this question or something similar, and I'll ask Chell if you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was addressed at the last council meeting on 22nd, April of 22nd, wasn't it?
It was brought up. I don't know that Kevin's question was answered directly.
Well, it was coming and going throughout the process. It started at the technical advisory groups and it went to the MVE, and I thought it was addressed at the last meeting, but I can't. I was busy at that time working on some artwork, so I can't remember.
Okay, maybe we can copy the answer down and provide a response at a later meeting.
Yeah, no, my point is, if it was part of the discussion, I don't want to put Dirk on the spot here too.
Well, right. Believe me, I'm not going to take the spot here, but I will. I have written the question down, and this is an issue that I know was brought to Stoyan's attention, I think earlier this month, and I want to make sure we're providing a thoughtful response if that's the right thing to do.
Thank you. Okay. And Stoyan, for agenda item number 11, do you have a staff report?
I will improvise here. I have some information to share. You know that when you say the council staff, it's not that much stuff left. I hope Krista and Annette will stick with me, although they're getting too much on their plates. So I want to appreciate their involvement and thank them for saving my back all the time. We're looking for code specialists, and we upgraded the position to code specialist 4. For almost 2 months, we received like 5 or 6 applications. We had interviews, and we were planning to have another set of interviews probably next week or the week after, but we haven't hired anybody yet. So, when we're talking about money, budget, and those kind of things, so it's not only the money, it's just whether or not we can find the right people who want to work for us. This is interesting job. If it needs a lot of work to get on the right speed, but when you get it, You will love it. So this is all I can say about the hiring. Again, we upgraded the position. We got some extra funds, and we're looking for code specialists but this is where we are. The second one, we have new council members, and welcome for everybody. And I apologize, I didn't reach out to everybody, but it's on my to-do list for next week. I want to talk to everybody, the new council members, and folks, feel free at any time to call me, email me, whatever you need. So I'll do my best to provide whatever you need. Okay. The cost benefit, it was mentioned several times, and I was beaten like a dead horse about this cost benefit analysis contract. Well, during the meeting in June, I will ask the council to give me a recommendation. What do you want me to do with that? Because, you know, some of the comments I appreciated, but others I took personally and I didn't appreciate at all. So as council staff, we're doing our best, but you know, talking about cost benefit analysis, there are not very many entities that are available and that are willing to do this type of job. So I don't know if you like or didn't the Ecotop report, but I want to thank these guys because they took the heat and they work on that, and we wouldn't have any final cost benefit analysis without them. So that's important. Okay. We received one request for reconsideration. This is related to proposal 078. This is for on-site renewable energy for commercial buildings over 10,000 square feet. It's not on the agenda today because the initial proposal was referring to WAC section 51.04.040. Excuse me. And this section is for local code amendments. It was modified in 2020. I missed that at the beginning. It was modified before I came on board, but it seems like the council intentionally modified this section. So now it's applicable to local amendments only. So we asked the person who submitted the petition for clarification if they targeted this section 51.04.040, and we got another document petition, and now the used section is 34.05.330. This is the part of the Administrative Procedures Act. So I will coordinate with Dirk on this one. I need more time to research it, and I'll rely on Dirk's advice whether or not this is the right section. But I will include this in the agenda for the next council meeting. So I will have more information, and I will send you all documents that you need to make a decision if you need to make a decision. The last one, I received 2 letters. The first one was from 3 members of the House of Representatives, and I really want to try to say their names, and I'll do my best, but Representative Mary Dye, Representative Keith Goner, I'm not sure I did it right, and the Representative Greg Gilday. And they're asking questions, they're asking the council 8, 9 questions, I think, all related to the adoption of the Energy Code Commercial. I didn't send them specific answers specific to their questions because most of the questions were already addressed during the rulemaking process, And if I have to prepare the answer, I need to listen to our recordings. I need to evaluate thousands of pages of documents to get to the specific meeting and a specific request. So my response was that the information addressing their questions will be included in the concise explanatory statement. This is part of the documents that we will be preparing with the CR 103. So this is part of the filing requirements we have. And we also received a letter from Senator Wilson and Representative Huff. In this case, they are not asking the council because they are ex officio council members. They are asking me, and they have similar questions, if not the same. And I send them a similar response. So that I really appreciate the interest the senators and representatives are showing, and it's always beneficial. But at this time, I didn't think I would be able to provide again specific questions. Okay, just for your information. This is all I have. If you have questions, I can answer your questions, but this is all the information that I wanted to share with you.
Are there any questions for staff? Okay. With that, that brings us to agenda item number 12, which is adjournment. Thank you, everyone, for your time today and putting in the effort, and thank you to the public for showing up and participating. Everyone have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.